Welcome to Goofy Harry. Today's adventure, what if Deadpool raised Harry Potter? If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Now let's begin. Chapter 1, The Worst Babysitter in the Multiverse. The first thing Wade Wilson noticed was that his left boot was on fire. The second was that he was in Surrey. Neither fact struck him as especially urgent, so he took a moment to stand on a perfectly manicured lawn and review the evening. There had been a portal. There had been a scientist in a clean white coat who should have known better than to hand Wade a prototype anything. There had been a lunch briefly involving 2 tacos and someone else's opinion about the tacos. And there had been, he recalled with a certain dignity, a rude hand gesture. "I regret none of it," he told the topiary. The topiary said nothing, which was its way. He stomped the boot out against a rosebush, apologized to the rosebush, and took his bearings. The houses stretched away on either side of the street in identical rows, each one a neat little box pretending not to notice its neighbors. The street lamps were all out. Overhead the sky was high and cold and starry. A cat with square whiskers and suspicious eyes sat on a low wall, watching him with a stare that belonged on a magistrate. "Evening," Wade said. The cat twitched its tail in a way that, if Wade had been paying attention, would have felt like being filed. A street sign stood at the corner. He squinted up at it and read, mouthing the syllables under the mask, "Privet Drive." Something moved in the back of his head. A filing cabinet creaked open. Out came a dog-eared image, lightning scar, round glasses, a boy on a doorstep. "Oh," Wade said quietly. "Oh, number, no, number." He looked around very carefully. He looked again. He walked to the nearest house, number 6, and read the brass numbers stuck to the door. He walked to number 8. Then he walked in the direction the numbers were going until he stood in front of number 4 with his hands on his hips and his mouth hanging slightly open inside the mask. "You have got," he said, "to be kidding me." The filing cabinet in his head produced a second, older image, and this one came with a soundtrack of small children in a theater laughing, a man with a silver beard, a cat that became a woman, and a giant on a flying motorcycle, a giant holding a bundle. Wade turned in a slow circle, hands still on hips. "Narrator," he said to the empty street, "if you have something to tell me, now would be the time." The wind, obligingly, picked up. A low rumble grew from far off down the street and began to pull closer. It was not a truck. A truck had rhythm and business and places to go. This rumble was lopsided, burdened, and faintly musical, as though someone had taught a thunderstorm how to idle. Wade moved without thinking off the walk into the shadow of the hedge, tucking his elbows in so the sheaths on his back wouldn't clack. The motorcycle that came down Privet Drive was bigger than the motorcycle should reasonably have been. The man on it was bigger than the motorcycle. He had a beard like an overgrown garden and a long coat that looked like 3 coats had a fight and the biggest won. He eased the bike to the curb in front of number 4 with surprising care, dismounted like a mountain taking its boots off, and picked up something from the sidecar with a tenderness that was, to Wade's professional eye, entirely genuine. A bundle, wrapped in a gray blanket, 2 very small feet sticking out the end. Wade's hands were on his hilts before he'd decided anything. He made them be quiet, and he made them let go. Another shape stepped out of the shadow of the hedge 12 feet down. Tall, thin, a long gray robe that didn't belong in Surrey, a silver beard that didn't belong anywhere. A woman beside him, severe, in green, like a hawk that had taken a job as a schoolteacher. Voices low, kind, a letter produced from a long sleeve and tucked under the bundle. The giant bent his face over the bundle a long moment and stepped back and put a hand the size of a dinner plate over his eyes and left it there. "Well," said the old man, and even that small word carried further than it should have. Wade did not move. Wade, in his defense, did not move for several full seconds, which for him was a minor miracle. The 3 of them, tall and enormous, walked back toward the motorcycle and the cat on the wall in the long, odd night. The motorcycle coughed itself awake. The bike lifted, lumbering, rose over the chimneys, and was gone. The old man made a small gesture, and the street lamps came back on in sequence, one after the other, like somebody going down a hallway turning on lights. He glanced back once at the doorstep, and his face did a thing that was hard to name. Then he too stepped aside and the night swallowed him. The cat looked at Wade. "Don't," Wade said. The cat did not. He waited a full count of 10. Then he walked out of the hedge and up the walk and stood over the bundle on the step of number 4 Privet Drive. The baby had black hair that stuck up in the back as if it had been combed by someone who had never met combs. His cheeks were pink. His fists were tight. He was awake, which surprised Wade, because babies who had been flown to Surrey at midnight by a giant had every right to be asleep. Green eyes, sharp and serious, stared up out of a round face. On the little forehead, neat and clean and already not quite healed, was a thin red cut in the shape of a lightning bolt. "Hi," Wade said. The baby blinked at him. I'm a fan of the books, Wade said. Well, fan is strong. I'm an appreciator of the IP. I have mixed feelings about certain authorial choices. I am not here to get into it. I just want you to know I know who you are. Okay. The baby kicked one foot out of the blanket, free and angry at the cold. Wade crouched. He picked up the letter. The seal, wax stamped, a lion snake badgerbird affair, softened under his thumb, and he opened it without ceremony and read it once fast. He read it twice slow. Huh, he said. He refolded it. He looked at the door of number 4. He looked through the front window where the glow of a small television lit a narrow room. The woman inside was very thin and very tired and very angry even in sleep, one arm flung across the back of the couch. The man inside was very not thin and was asleep in a way that looked like he had practiced not hearing things. There was a second room off the hall, glimpsed in a sliver through a half-open door, where a fat baby slept in a cot under a mobile of airplanes. The filing cabinet in Wade's head produced a third image. It was of a boy in a tiny bedroom under a staircase, knees pulled to his chest, eyes like a hostage. Wade crouched on the step of number 4 Privet Drive and looked down at the baby on the doorstep and the letter in his hand, and the baby reached up one pudgy fist and gripped the edge of Wade's mask and tugged it a quarter inch, frowning with the immense concentration of someone doing physics. Buddy, Wade said softly, I am going to say something and I want you to take it the right way because I am saying it with love. He looked at the letter, he looked at the house, he looked at the cat which had the decency to be looking elsewhere. Screw this. He stood up. He tucked the baby into the crook of his elbow like a loaf of very expensive bread. He turned, carried the bundle down the walk, and dropped the letter, crumpled small, into the storm drain at the corner of Privet and Magnolia. It made a wet, dignified sound as it went. He walked 3 blocks before he stopped. Then he stood under a street lamp and looked at the baby and spoke to him quietly, like a man negotiating with a client. Here's where we are, Harry. Yes, I'm calling you Harry. Look at you, you're a Harry. Your face is writing its own name right now. Here's where we are. The people in that house, the aunt and uncle people are, and I'm saying this as a licensed expert in bad vibes, exactly the right level of bad that makes a kid grow up hard. Not the good kind of hard where you get abs and a catchphrase, the other kind. And the old guy and the lady and the giant, they love you. I saw that. The giant especially. I'd bet a kidney the giant would die for you, but love isn't the same as a plan, and they have a plan, Harry. They have a plan that gets you here. He tapped the doorstep at an imaginary number 4. And leaves you here for 10 years alone to be hurt so you can be shaped, so you can be useful, so you can be easy to move. The baby, unimpressed, bit Wade's thumb. Ow, good instincts, keep those. Wade lifted him higher. The scar on the baby's forehead caught the street lamp and gleamed the wrong red. Behind the scar, Wade's senses, the ones that had kept him alive through every variety of very specific violence, made a sound like a cat's back arching. Something was curled behind that forehead that didn't belong to the baby. Something small and hot and patient, tucked into the boy like a tick under a dog's ear. Well, Wade said, that's a problem for later. He put the baby against his shoulder, the way he had seen women in parks do, and the baby accepted this as if he had known Wade for years, which Wade found at once enormously flattering and deeply sad. He started to walk. He walked past the mailbox with the painted geese. He walked past the car parked on the wrong side of the road. He walked past the cat on the wall, which turned its head to follow him all the way. At the corner, he stopped and tipped his mask up enough to look the cat in the eye. You tell Beardo I said, he began. The cat lifted its whiskers. You know what, never mind, I'll tell him myself, eventually, let him wonder. The cat watched him go. There's a trick Wade had learned late in his career, a trick that involved a very small crack between one place and another, a crack you could slip into if you didn't weigh too much and you weren't too particular about the things you left behind. He had 4 of these cracks saved on a keyring in his head. One of them went to a cabin in the Scottish Highlands he had built himself during a bad year when he had wanted to be nowhere in particular. He had picked the spot because it was ugly, it was remote, and the nearest humans were a family of sheep who did not ask questions. He stopped in the middle of the quiet road and he looked around once more. All right, he said to no one. Let's not do this on a corner. He stepped sideways fast into the crack. The cabin was cold when he got there, and it stayed cold for almost 20 minutes while he made up his mind about a fire. The baby, who had ridden through the interstitial space with the unbothered expression of a commuter, was set down on the only couch. The couch was plaid. The couch was ugly. The couch had been owned previously by a dentist in Glasgow who had not known that he was going to stop owning it the day Wade decided to own it instead. Sorry about the upholstery, buddy. Acquired taste, emphasis on acquired. Wade got a fire going. Wade got a kettle on. Wade discovered he had no baby bottle and no baby milk and no baby food and very few thoughts about how any of those things worked. He chopped up half a banana with a cleaver. He handed the baby half a banana chunk, which was immediately smashed and then, after some discussion, eaten. At some point, Wade realized he was talking to the baby in a steady, low voice, the way he talked to his guns when he was cleaning them, an easy, unhurried voice that told the thing in his hand what he was doing and why and what was next. He had not, he realized, spoken in that voice to another human being in a long time. "Okay," he said, "plan, you want a plan, I'll give you a plan, we stay off the grid. Stay out of the house with the stairs boycott. We don't go to Surrey, we don't go to London until we have to. We do go eventually because there are some very specific stores where some very specific things are sold and also a bank full of murder accountants who I suspect I will love. But not yet, not for a long time. For a long time, you and me, we grow you up in a place where no one is writing your name down in a long book. Deal." The baby blew a banana bubble and popped it with his fist. "Deal." He found a wool blanket in a cedar chest that smelled like cedar chest and mothballs and his own worst year. He wrapped the baby. He sat on the plaid couch with the baby on his chest and he thought. He thought about the old man who had a kind face and tired eyes and a plan, and the plan was a good plan if your currency was the greater good and not a specific small boy. He thought about the giant whose face had shaken under its hand. He thought about the aunt with the angry sleep and the uncle with the practiced not hearing. He thought about the thing curled under the scar. He thought about his own face, which he did not like to think about, and about the long, stupid years of being hired to turn other people's problems into other people's problems. He thought last about the moment the baby had grabbed the edge of his mask. "Okay, kiddo," Wade said. He tipped his chin down so the baby could see him, mask still on. "I know I'm not much of a choice. I'm a bad choice statistically. Possibly the worst choice. Like if you pulled 10,000 men off a street and made them into a lineup, I'd be the one the officer warned you about. But the other options were bad and I was here, and here's what you get. I'll teach you things they don't teach you. I'll teach you to eat real food. I'll teach you to fight and to not fight. I'll teach you, if it comes to it, how to die on your feet, but we're going to do everything we can to avoid that, because on my watch, kid, you live. Deal." The baby's head had grown heavy against his chest. Sleep was finding him. One small green eye stayed open a moment longer, looking up at Wade in a way that felt briefly like being seen. "Deal," Wade said again and closed the deal for both of them. Outside, very far away, a clock in a great old castle began to ring. It rang because a charm on the clock had noticed that somewhere in the world a particular boy, whose name had been entered into a great old book in very small letters on a very early page, had passed the first hour of being entirely no one's ward, and the charm was in its way outraged. The clock rang 11 times and stopped. In the cabin in the Highlands, the fire cracked, and Wade Wilson ate the other half of the banana and watched the boy on his chest breathe. "Well," he said. "This is a thing I'm doing now." He closed his eyes. He slept, which he almost never did, and which he did that night in 40-minute watches, like a man on a boat expecting weather. Somewhere south of the cabin, somewhere deep in a school that was also a fortress, an old man sat alone in a round room at the top of a stair. A letter had been returned to him, unreadable and damp and smelling distantly of petrol. He turned it over in his hands for a long time. He set it on his desk. He steepled his fingers. He sat there not moving until the first gray of morning. "Oh dear," he said at last, quietly. And in Surrey, in the pale light before dawn, a very thin woman opened the front door of number 4 Privet Drive to put out the milk bottles, looked down at her doorstep, found it empty, sniffed, decided she had had a bad dream, and went back inside. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2, Tiny Wizard Boot Camp. 4 years old, Harry sat on the kitchen counter and watched Wade crack eggs one-handed into a bowl. The trick with the eggs, Wade said, was not the crack. Any idiot could crack an egg. The trick was keeping shell out of the bowl. A shell in the bowl was how relationships ended. "Shells ruin," Harry said. "Relationships. See, you're a genius. Crack one." Harry cracked an egg. Half the shell went in the bowl. He picked it out with very small, very serious fingers. "My first Michelin star," Wade said, holding his heart. "I'll cherish this." The cabin had grown up around them the way small plants grow around a stone. A room had been added on, then another. There was a stove that smelled of old garlic. There was a stone fireplace with a crooked spine. There was a rug that Wade had stolen from a hotel he had not been invited to. There was a long wall covered entirely in books that none of the books had been bought for, and a second wall covered in weapons that, when Harry asked if he could touch them, Wade had said yes. Yes, the way Wade said it, not the yes of a parent who hadn't thought it through, but the yes of a man who had thought about it for a long time. "You touch them, kiddo, and you touch them like a grown-up. Nothing in this house is forbidden to you. Everything in this house is dangerous." You learn everything and you treat everything like it can kill you, because some of it can. Harry had been 3 years old when Wade taught him the difference between a knife that cut toward him and a knife that cut away. Harry had been 3 years and 3 months when Wade taught him that you did not run with the knife. Harry had been 3 years and 4 months when Harry had run with a knife anyway, and fallen, and Wade had stitched the cut closed in the kitchen with kitchen string, very carefully, narrating each stitch, over, under, through, not too tight, good boy, while Harry cried and was not scolded. The scar on Harry's left palm was neat and white and had been there longer than he remembered. At 4 he could cook 3 dishes, scrambled eggs, rice, and a chimichanga that Wade declared legally distinct from the true chimichanga for intellectual property reasons but spiritually present. At 5 he could name every bone in his own hand. At 6 he was given his first knife, a real one, small but honest, with a blade no longer than his thumb, and told not to show off with it. He did not show off with it. He carried it in a little leather sheath on his belt and used it to cut apples and the occasional rope, and once at the edge of the lake, the jammed bail of a fishing reel while Wade watched and didn't help and afterward said, "Good." At 7 Harry asked, "What about the magic?" Wade was at the sink. He turned off the tap. He dried his hands on a dish towel that said in faded script, "My other knife is also a knife." He sat down across from Harry at the kitchen table and put his elbows on it and laced his fingers together the way a person does before saying something that matters. "Okay, buddy, I was wondering when we were going to get to this. Couple of things. 1, yes, there's magic. You have some of it, it's inside you mostly, and sometimes it comes out of you, and when it comes out of you it looks like the spoons flying across the room that time the big storm came, or the glass of water that boiled when you got mad at me about the haircut. Which I apologize, that haircut was bad, I know. 2, magic is a muscle. You have it, you don't know how to use it yet, so when you get really upset it flexes on its own. That's not your fault, but it's yours to learn. 3, there's a whole world of people who do magic on purpose. They have a school for it. You'll probably go there someday if we play our cards right, or if we play our cards wrong and they make us. 4, I do not have magic, I have other things, so the teaching part for the magic specifically is going to look a lot like me being clueless and you figuring it out, and I will be the world's loudest cheerleader in the stands. You okay with that? Harry considered. Yeah, good man. Can we practice? Oh hell yes, we can practice. You want to practice making things move, or making things hot, or making things stop, because that's my favorite. Making things move, Harry said. Classic. They practiced in the yard. Wade had nailed a plank between 2 trees and mounted along its length a row of empty tin cans. The cans had names on them in Wade's enthusiastic scrawl. Todd, Barry, Krula, Mr. Tanner, Todd 2, a guy named Steve. At first Harry had knocked one over by accident the way a gust of wind knocks something over. It had felt like a sneeze, but slower. Wade had whooped like a man at a baseball game. They had worked afterward on doing it on purpose. By 9 he could topple Todd reliably. By 10 he could topple Todd from across the yard with his eyes closed while reciting the rules of chess. By 11 he could make a teacup walk itself across the table to him without spilling. He learned other things in the gaps. He learned to read early and read a lot. Novels Wade had bought for him, novels Wade had stolen for him, and books on magical theory that Wade had acquired through a series of misadventures in a London shop which ended with a bookseller fainting at the sight of a red mask, and a polite 20-pound note left on a counter under a book that had been breathing. He learned Latin because Wade said magic liked Latin. He learned a little Greek because Wade said Latin wouldn't shut up about Greek. He learned to shoot a pistol at 8 carefully in the cleared field behind the cabin, only ever at paper targets, only ever with Wade 3 feet behind him, checking the stance of his feet and the angle of his wrists. He did not love it the way Wade loved it. He was good at it the way someone is good at arithmetic, calmly, correctly, and he put it down when he was done. Wade took note of that. Wade was proud in a quiet way he did not tell Harry about. He learned chess because Wade was bad at chess and wanted someone who could beat him. By 10, Harry could. By 11, Harry did most of the time, though Wade had started winning back some games with increasingly bizarre openings that the books called unsound and that Wade called flexible. He learned, too, not to lie to Wade because Wade always knew. He also learned, crucially, that he was allowed to be angry. He was allowed to cry. He was allowed to slam the door and scream into the pillow on his bed for 10 minutes at a time about the unfairness of the sheep who would not let him pet them. He was allowed to hate the rain. He was allowed to love things. Wade called these the allowed things and kept a real running list of them, taped to the fridge, the way other parents kept chore charts. Other parents did not have fridges with tape on them reading. It is allowed that you have a bad day. Harry's fridge had that. It also had, it is allowed that you like the neighbor's sheep better than Wade. It is allowed that you cry when the movie is sad. It is allowed that you are not okay. It is not allowed that you lie about not being okay. There were rules. There were always rules, but the rules were short and they were fair. He was 9 when the hippogriff showed up. Wade had come back from somewhere. Wade went somewhere every month or two, kissed Harry on the head, said behind enemy lines for a couple of days, "Mrs. McNabb is coming to check on you. She's been vetted. She has a shotgun. I love you. Don't burn down the cabin." And this time he came back leading a creature by a rope. The creature was the size of a horse and had the front end of an eagle and the back end of a horse and a glare like a judge at a bad trial. It was annoyed at being on a rope. "I won him in a fight," Wade said. "I also won the fight. His name is Nigel." Nigel was not his name. Nigel was the name Wade had given him because Wade said he looked like a Nigel. The hippogriff had a different name of which he was proud, which Wade had not asked. They kept him for 4 months. Harry learned to bow to him and wait for him to bow back. Nigel ate a great many of the sheep's apples. Nigel allowed Harry to stroke his neck and never allowed Wade to do so, a fact about which Wade was publicly offended and privately delighted. "See," Wade said, "the kid's good people. Animals know. Wade is less good people. It tracks." After 4 months, Wade found Nigel a better home with a magical hermit in Norway and walked him there himself. He came back smelling of pine. Harry's magic grew with him. It was an amiable muscle now. It had opinions. It liked music. It did not like being rushed. It found the cabin's warmth comforting the way a cat does. It flared when Harry was scared and it smoothed itself out when Wade's voice entered the room. More than once Wade caught it settling in his direction the way a dog's ear cocks toward its person. Wade pretended not to notice and ached. At 10, Harry asked idly over breakfast, "Do we ever worry about the old man?" Wade did not ask who the old man was. He had known this question was coming for a year. "Every single day, kiddo. Why hasn't he found us?" "Because," Wade said and paused to butter his toast, "the old man is smart and he's looking, and he's been looking for 10 years. But the place we live isn't on any map, including the magical ones, because I built the place and I didn't tell any map. And me, I throw off a weird signal because of the whole dead cell screaming all the time thing that is deeply unpleasant to live inside, thanks for asking, which scrambles the kind of searching he does. And you, my friend, do not ping, not in the way he expects. You're quiet, you're small. You grew up quiet and small because I asked you to, and because you understood why I was asking. He's been looking for a famous boy. We have not given him one. What happens when we give him one?" "Ah," Wade said. He bit his toast. "Now that is the question. That happens when you're 11, because when you're 11 there's a school, and the school sends a letter. And the letter, this is the piece I've been thinking about a lot, the letter doesn't hunt by location the way his little tracking charms do. The letter hunts by you, by your blood, by the feeling of your magic being 11 years old and ready. We can stop a lot of things, kiddo. We are not going to be able to stop that letter. Do I want to stop it? Number, I don't think you do. Because the school is the place where you are going to meet the friends of your life, and I do not say that lightly, because I have seen many, many friends of many, many lives, and I am good at smelling them coming." Harry chewed. "Am I going to like it? I think sometimes you're going to love it. I think sometimes you're going to want to burn it to the ground. I think both are correct responses. The burning it to the ground impulse is, in fact, one of the reasons I raised you in the first place, because the old man raised boys who loved the place. That's fine. That's useful. But nobody loves a thing harder than the person who's willing to burn it down for being bad at itself. So go love it and burn it if you need to." "Wade," Harry said. "Yes. Are you coming with me?" Wade put his toast down. He leaned his elbows on the table the way he did when he was about to say something true. "I'll walk you to the door, bud. I'll be at every handoff. I'll be at every holiday. I'll be at every moment you need me and a great many moments you don't. I will embarrass you. I will embarrass your friends. I will be on the other end of your letters. I will not leave your life, ever. But the walking around behind you with a hand on your shoulder, that's not for this next part. You've got good shoulders." Harry nodded. He didn't say anything about his own shoulders. He took his plate to the sink, washed it, set it on the drying rack upside down. Then he came back and hugged Wade around the neck from behind for a long time. It was spring of his 11th year when the other thing began. He started to feel in the edges of sleep a cold shape in the dark of his head. It was not a dream, although it came at the borders of dreams. It was a thin, hungry shape, curled small, whispering in a language that was half his own. It used names it should not have known. It said, "Harry," it said, "let me." It said once very clearly in a voice that felt like an old ghost trying to remember what a voice sounded like, "Your mother screamed for you." It is foolish to believe she did not. Harry opened his eyes. He lay in the dark for a long count. He got up. He crossed the cold floorboards on silent feet. He went to the living room where Wade was, as usual, sitting up because he almost never slept, cleaning a gun at the kitchen table by the low light of the oil lamp. "There's a thing in my head," Harry said. Wade looked up. "I know," Wade said. "What is it?" "It's a small, bad thing, and it is going to be dealt with, not tonight." Can you tell me what it is? When you're older, not much older, soon, but not tonight. Why not tonight? Because tonight you are going to go back to bed and you are going to go to sleep in the room next to a man who has killed scarier things than the thing in your head, and you are going to know that the thing in your head is not winning. It does not get to win. Whatever it says, you, my friend, know who you are. Tell me who you are. Harry thought about it. I'm Harry, he said. I live in this cabin. I have a knife and a pistol and a chess board. I'm better at chess than you. I like it when the sheep come to the fence. I can move a teacup with my mind when I want to. I am not, he paused. The word came to him hot. A lamb. God Almighty, Wade said under his breath. Say it again so I can cross-stitch it. I am not a lamb. Go to bed, kid, and if it whispers again, you whisper back. You are a guest in my head, and I do not like you, and also I am not a lamb. Say it like you're angry. Say it like you mean it. Okay. Harry went to bed. He did not hear the whisper again that night. The thing in his head at the border of his sleep folded itself smaller in resentment and waited. A week before his 11th birthday, two things happened that were not coincidences but were related in a way neither Harry nor Wade yet understood. The first, a letter arrived. It did not come down the chimney. It did not come through the window. It did not come by owl because owls, Wade had said vividly and at length, could not find the cabin either. It arrived prosaically on the kitchen table, under the sugar bowl, while both Wade and Harry were out in the yard arguing about whether the chess trophy Harry had made from an old teapot should live on the mantelpiece. When they came back in, the letter was there, and Wade, who had put the sugar bowl on the table himself half an hour earlier, looked at it with the face of a man who has been outplayed and is not entirely mad about it. The envelope was made of yellowish parchment. It was addressed in emerald green ink, Mr. H. Potter, the kitchen table, the cabin in the Highlands, somewhere we can both agree is none of our business. Oh, that's sassy, Wade said. That's a sassy letter. I like this letter. Harry opened it carefully. He read it aloud. The word Hogwarts came out of his mouth for the first time in his life, and when it did, Wade clapped once softly and tipped his head back to the ceiling. Oh, thank God, subsidized witchcraft. I was going to have to homeschool you, and I can barely spell wizard. I've been rehearsing this moment in front of the mirror for 4 years, kiddo. I was going to say something much more moving, but all I've got is oh, thank God. That's also moving, Harry said, laughing. Is it good? Is it enough? I feel like I should be holding you up on a hill. It's enough. The second thing that happened was a bird, a black bird on the peak of the roof, which had not been there that morning. It sat with its feathers ruffled up against the cold and its head tipped to one side, and it watched the window, and when Harry came out onto the step to put out crumbs for the sheep, it turned its head to watch him, exactly with an intelligence that was not a bird's. It did not caw. It did not move. After a moment it lifted itself up and away and did not return, and Wade, who did not miss birds when they watched it go without comment, and then came out and stood beside Harry on the step and put a hand on the top of Harry's head and left it there. You ready to go shopping, buddy? Number, that's okay. Neither am I. Let's go anyway. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. Diagon Alley is a capitalist hellscape. They came up out of the ground at Charing Cross Road on a Tuesday morning in the middle of the rush, and Wade Wilson was, as promised, in full regalia. This had been negotiated. I'm wearing the suit, Wade had said. I am not going to London in a cardigan, Harry, I'm not. The cardigan was for the cabin. The cardigan was for our rustic era. We're in our public era now. You'll scare people. Magic London, bub. Everything scares people in Magic London. The average wizard on the street is a goth muppet. I'm going to blend in like a vegan at a butcher's. Harry had agreed, partly because he'd known he would lose, and partly because a small and slightly proud part of him wanted to see exactly how Magic London reacted to having a red-masked man in katanas come through the door of its best-kept secret. The street outside the Leaky Cauldron was full of commuters who did not notice the pub, partly because the pub was charmed not to be noticed, and partly because commuters never notice anything. Wade elbowed through a stream of them. Pardon me, excuse me, big fan coming through, pardon, oh I like your hat, and steered Harry by the shoulder to a door that looked reliably like no door at all until you saw it, and then looked like a very old door. He held it for Harry. Harry stepped through. The Leaky Cauldron was warm and low-ceilinged, and smelled of beer and soot and magic, which to Harry smelled like an old library left out in the rain. 24 people in robes turned their heads at the sound of the bell. 24 people in robes kept looking a great deal longer than was polite. Howdy, Wade said loudly to the whole room. We're peaceful. We're here for your excellent ale and some wholesome light commerce. My nephew's going to Hogwarts. Please do not make a scene. I've been told making scenes is rude, and I am actively working on it. A barman with no teeth smiled at them anyway, which was generous because Wade was not a smile-back kind of sight. A pair of old women in the corner put their heads together. A young warlock in indigo robes dropped a quill. Through there, I think, Wade said, steering. Bricks. Brick wall, tap, 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 Mr. Potter. The voice came from a booth in the corner and belonged to a mountain with a beard. Harry's first impression was that the beard had taken a job as a man. The second was that the man was weeping, silently and without apology, into a mug the size of a small bucket. "Oh, Lord have mercy," the man said. "Oh, look at you. Oh, Lord have mercy, ye look juice like him, ye look juice like him, wit your mother's eyes, oh." Wade's hand tightened minutely on Harry's shoulder. He let it tighten and then deliberately let it loosen. "Easy, Sasquatch," Wade said. "Feet on the ground, who are you?" "Rubeus Hagrid," said the giant, wiping his eyes on his sleeve. "Keeper o' keys and grounds o' Hogwarts. And you must be—" His eye caught the suit, the swords, the mask, and a very small flicker of confusion went through him that did not have time to mature into anything bigger before he said, "The gentleman what's been raisin', I am." "Hi," Wade said, lifting a hand. "Yes, I am the gentleman. Don't sweat the vibe. I know it's a vibe. Big fan of your coat and your face. It's a strong face." "It's been through a lot." Hagrid blinked. Hagrid laughed, wet. "I like you already, sir. I don't mind sayin'. I've wondered for 10 years. "You cried," Wade said simply, "that night." "Oh, you cried over him?" "I did," Hagrid said, his eyes filled again. "I did. I loved his parents. I loved 'em. I'd a taken I am myself, I swear, if they'd let me. Small though for me, small little, Hagrid," Harry said gently. "Yeah, you don't have to cry. I'm all right." Hagrid looked down at him as if for the first time, and what crossed his face was a complicated thing that mixed old grief with new relief and something that looked to Harry like shame. He folded the shame away. "Arr," he said, "you are at that, ain't ye? You are at that." Wade tipped his head, considering the giant. "You're going to tell Beardo you saw us, huh?" I don't know who ye mean, sir." "Big guy, long beard, silver, plays chess with people like they were pawns, your boss. Tell him we said hi, tell him we'll be seeing him. Tell him we appreciate that he's been worrying about Harry for 10 years and that he can stand to worry about Harry for 10 more. Harry's fine. Harry's better than fine. Harry's coming to school in September. Harry is in fact standing right here, and if Beardo wants to have a chat, he's going to have to come over like a man and not send owls through a Sasquatch." "Got that? You're a peculiar fella, aren't you?" Hagrid said slowly. But yeah, like the boy. I am crazy about the boy." Hagrid nodded. He nodded again. He stuck out a hand the size of a small dog. Wade shook it with the careful grip of a man who had been present for many first handshakes that went badly. "I'll tell I am your bringin'. I am in September," Hagrid said. "Ye'll hear from I am Mr. Wade. Mr. Wade, just Wade, just Wade." Hagrid's eyes were on Harry again, bright and watery. "Ye look after your uncle now." "I do," Harry said very gravely. Hagrid barked a laugh and pushed his mug back and stood up, shaking the booth, and went ahead of them, waving his stick at the bricks at the back. The wall opened. The first thing Harry saw on Diagon Alley was a boy being dragged by the ear down the steps of an apothecary. The second was a shop window full of moving broomsticks. The third was color. He hadn't expected the color. He had read about magical London in books Wade had stolen from Flourish and Blots, and the books had described it in an English the books thought was grand but which had come to him on the page as gray cobbles, gray stone, gray robes. The alley was not gray. The alley was copper and emerald and brass and ochre, cauldrons gleaming in the sun, purple canopied stalls, children in crimson robes and cobalt robes and robes the color of oxidized pennies. An apothecary door painted the sick green of something nobody should put in a tea, a bakery window piled with pastries in 6 shades of gold. The air was warm. It smelled of polish and strong coffee and something a little burned. Harry stood still for a long beat. Wade let him. Wade did not speak. When Harry finally breathed, Wade said softly over his shoulder, "First time's the best time, kiddo, remember it. I know, yeah." Hagrid, for his part, had taken the scene in with a big contented breath and then bent to Harry's ear and murmured, "Ye go with Mr. Wade now, I've business up the way. But ye'll see me again afore ye leave, and I'll see ye on the platform in September, ye understand. Anything ye need, ye ask for Hagrid." "Okay," Harry said. "Hagrid, thank you." Hagrid flushed all the way up to his eyebrows, ducked his head, and vanished into the crowd with the slow force of a small ship through a harbor. "Okay," Wade said. "First stop, the murder bank." Gringotts was a cliff of white marble cut into the shape of a courthouse. The steps up to it were wide and long. The doors up top were huge and ceremonial. Harry had to crane his neck to see the inscription over the entrance. "Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed, for those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn." "Wild," Wade whispered. "Imagine putting that over a bank. Imagine the confidence. Imagine the hostile vibe. I love it here. I love these little men." The goblin at the first counter did not look up when they approached. He was counting something through a loop. Wade waited patiently. After 15 seconds, he cleared his throat. After 30, he cleared his throat again, louder. After 45, he leaned on the counter with both elbows and said, in a language that was not English, something that Harry did not understand but that came out low in Wade's throat like a polite growl. The goblin looked up. What he said back was also not English. It was also, Harry observed, reluctantly amused. Wade said something longer. The goblin said something shorter. Wade put a hand over his heart in extremely theatrical offense. The goblin showed a row of very sharp teeth that was, eventually, recognizable as a smile. Wade produced a small brass key from somewhere on his person and laid it on the counter. The goblin turned it over and made a sound that could have been appreciation or a very specific disease. "Mr. Potter," the goblin said in English now, not looking at Harry. "Vault 687, come with me." "What did you say to him?" Harry murmured as they walked. "I said he was handsome," Wade whispered, "with very good skin, and that his mother's honor was beyond question, which is a surprisingly essential compliment in Gobbledegook, and I insulted his boots." "You insult the boots. It's how they know you respect them. You speak Gobbledegook." "Kiddo, I speak like 12 of these. I spent 2 years being hired for things I should not have been hired for, picked up souvenirs. Ask me about Atlantean later." "Well, don't. Atlantean gives me a rash." The cart ride down into the vaults was exactly as advertised in the brochure Wade had stolen from a dentist's office 2 years previous. Rails, wind, a drop that lifted Harry's stomach into his mouth and held it there. He laughed most of the way. Wade, beside him, was not laughing. Wade was going woo and oh God, and that was my stomach, sir, I'd like it back, in a voice that was not a voice he used on purpose for Harry's benefit. Wade did not like the drop, and he did not pretend he did. Harry liked that about him. The vault was round and small and piled with coin, gold, silver, bronze, in a way that was not a fortune on the scale of the myths, but was comfortably enough for a boy to be at school and never think about money. Harry looked at it a long moment. "That's a lot," he said quietly. "It's your parents' savings, bud. I know. Your dad was not broke. I know. We don't touch more than we need. Your dad's savings paid for you, not for us. I know, Wade. Okay." Harry scooped enough into a bag for school. He left the rest. On the ride up, the goblin driving the cart glanced back at them twice, with something in his narrow eye that might have been curiosity, and when they emerged into the light, Wade stopped at the counter and laid his hand flat and said one more sentence in Gobbledegook. The goblin did not smile, but he touched his hand once briefly to the back of Wade's glove and turned away. "What did you say there?" Harry asked, walking back out through the giant doors. "I said if you ever come to this bank alone, you come to him. I said his name. I said he'd know you." "How? He'll know. How?" "Son," Wade said, "I've been bribing quietly for a long time, and I bribe with relationships, not coin." Moving on, robes next. Madame Malkin's Robes for All Occasions was a little shop where several women and one very harried man took measurements with tape that moved on its own and chalk that drew on its own. A boy was already standing on a stool when Harry came in, being pinned by a crouching seamstress. He had a pointed, pale face and hair so blonde it was almost white, and he was very bored. "Hogwarts," the boy said without turning his head. The voice expected the answer to be yes. "Yep," Harry said, climbing up onto the stool beside him. First year. Do you know what house you'll be in?" "Number," the boy sniffed. "My whole family's been in Slytherin. Father says if I were in Hufflepuff I'd leave, wouldn't you?" Harry considered this. Wade, behind them, was studying a row of dress robes the color of mulled wine and softly whistling the theme from a movie that had not yet been released in Britain. Harry had been told carefully that he was allowed to be whoever he needed to be in whichever room he found himself in, and that this did not mean lying, it meant picking. "Hufflepuff's the house of the nice ones, right?" he said. "The dumb ones." "I heard it's the loyal ones. Loyal's just a word for dumb. Is it though?" The boy's eyes slid sideways for the first time, assessing. Harry kept his own face pleasant and did not look away. They were of a height on the stools, which Harry noticed the boy did not like, so Harry did not stand up straighter. "Do you know who I am?" the boy said experimentally. "Nope. Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." "Ah, why am I telling my name to a boy whose name I don't know?" "Habit, probably." The boy laughed. It surprised him. It surprised him enough that he covered it up with a very small cough. "And you are, Harry," Harry said, "Potter." Draco Malfoy went as still as an animal does when the wind changes. "Harry Potter." "Yes, the Harry Potter. I think the only one. Where have you been?" "Around." "Around where?" "Around," Harry said pleasantly, "and here." Draco's eyes went to his forehead, to the fringe that Harry had pushed down carefully over the scar that morning, as if he could see through it by wanting to enough. Harry, with a calm he did not entirely feel but which a decade of Wade's drills had installed in him like a floorboard, turned his face slightly away and thanked the seamstress and hopped down from the stool. You'll be in Slytherin, you know, Draco said, a little lower, almost coaxing. You have to be. The greats are all in Slytherin. The wrong sort of witches and wizards, they're all in other houses. You don't want the wrong sort, do you? I don't know the sorts yet, Harry said. He was speaking in the very even voice Wade called the "you are about to step on a rake" voice. So I'll find out, but Draco blinked at the use of his name. Whatever sort you think you are, you should know I've already met some of the wrong sort. I've even had dinner with some of the wrong sort. They made a decent ratatouille. So the thing where you decide for me by the end of this conversation which sort I'm going to be, that's not going to work, I don't think. I'm going to tell you no very politely so that we can both remember this conversation later as one where nothing bad happened, and I can hand you this. He handed Draco his own lost chalk, which had rolled onto the floor under the stool while they talked, and then I'll see you on the train. Draco took the chalk. Draco did not say anything. Draco watched him go, hands loose at his sides, head tipped, and it was to his credit that he did not say the word he wanted to say. Smooth, Wade murmured as they left the shop. Smooth, you are a tiny diplomat. You are a tiny diplomat with a knife in his sock. He's not stupid. No, he is absolutely not stupid. And he's going to be 10 kinds of trouble, and I want you to remember exactly how you talked to him just now, because you are going to need to keep doing that for 7 years. You treat him like a person. People who aren't treated like people start believing they aren't. Yes, sir. Also, Wade said, steering him around a sign advertising self-stirring cauldrons, never call me sir again, it creeps me out. Yes, sir, Harry. Yes, Uncle Wade. I changed my mind. Call me sir. It's growing on me. The rest of the morning disappeared into a fog of shops. Flourish and Blots was worse than the apothecary for Wade. Oh, I'm not even pretending I haven't been in this one. And a clerk with a waxed mustache and a very small ledger eyed Wade suspiciously until Wade made a very large purchase with very real money, at which point the ledger was discreetly closed. Harry got his books. He got a wand case. He got a scale. He got a telescope that Wade insisted on because Wade loved telescopes on principle. He got, against the rules, a second knife that looked like a quill and a belt that was also a bandolier, and a stuffed griffin the size of a dinner plate that made a huffing sound when you squeezed it. This last Wade bought with a kind of defiant tenderness. Don't read into it, he muttered. I just want you to have a friend. Ollivanders came at the end. The shop was narrow. The shelves went up higher than any shelves had a right to. The boxes on the shelves were old and dented. The air inside smelled of cedar and stone and the particular clean coolness of a room that has been kept at an even temperature for a very long time. A single brass bell over the door gave a small, exhausted ring as they came in. No one was behind the counter. Then there was a man, thin, with eyes like moons, standing where no man had been standing a second before. Ah, said Mr. Ollivander softly, without taking his eyes off Harry. I wondered when I'd be seeing you. Harry stood very still. 11 inches, mahogany, pliable, a good wand for transfiguration. Ollivander's eyes were on him, past him, through him, in a way that Harry did not like. That was your father's. Unicorn hair core, 10 1/4, willow, supple, nice wand for charm work. That was your mother's. Okay, Harry said, because nothing else seemed safe. And you, Ollivander said, turning for the first time, turning at last to look at Wade. He looked for a long time. Do not, he said very quietly, try to pass through my door as a customer. Wasn't planning on it, tall, pale, and deeply creepy. You hum, Ollivander said. You hum most unpleasantly. There is no wand in this shop that will consent to you. There is no wand in the world that will consent to you. You are an off-note, sir, at a very long concert. I'll take that as a compliment. You may. Ollivander's eyes drifted back to Harry. You, Mr. Potter, I am very interested in. He took measurements with a tape that moved by itself. He vanished up a ladder. He came back down with a tower of boxes. He handed Harry one wand, which Ollivander himself snatched back almost before Harry had closed his fingers on it. He handed him another. He handed him another. Harry tried each dutifully. Each wand lay in his hand like a stick. Curious, Ollivander murmured after the 7th. Curious, I wonder. He climbed the ladder. He came down with a thin box that was plainer than the others. He set it on the counter and opened it with a kind of reverence that made Harry's stomach go cold. 11 inches, he said. Holly, phoenix feather, nice and supple. Try it. Harry picked up the wand. The world did a small, quiet thing. A warmth ran up the inside of his arm. Red sparks and then gold ones flickered in the air at the tip and drifted down like very small leaves. He didn't move. He didn't speak. Ollivander clapped once, softly. Curious, he said again. You said that already, Phoenix man. Phoenix, Mr. Wilson. That is what I said. The phoenix whose tail feather sits in your nephew's wand, said Ollivander, ignoring him with dignity, gave one other feather, just one. It is curious indeed that this wand should choose you when its brother, Mr. Potter, is the wand that gave you that scar. Harry looked at the wand in his hand. Wade said nothing for a full 5 seconds. Then he said very lightly, "Phoenix boy, you know what, you've been helpful. Thank you for this extremely ominous information. We're going to take it home and think about it over dinner." Harry grabbed the box. "I don't think it was by accident," Ollivander said gently, to no one in particular. "Such things are never by accident." "Aha, Mr. Potter," Ollivander said, "I think we must expect great things from you." "Yeah, get in line," Wade said, steering Harry toward the door. "Great things have been expected of this child since he was 3 hours old. If you've got a great things coupon, buddy, you can put it on the stack with everybody else's. 7 galleons, was it? Here, keep the change. Buy yourself a face. Love the mystery thing. Love it. Don't overuse it. Come on, kid, we're getting ice cream. We're getting 2 ice creams. I am getting something with rum in it." They stepped back into the sun. Harry carried the wand in its box under one arm. His ears were ringing slightly the way they did after a loud bang, and his palm was still warm where the wood had touched it. "Wade, I know. The scar, I know, kiddo, I know. We're going to have the conversation, just not on the street. Ice cream, then the conversation." They bought 2 ice creams. They sat on a bench in front of a shop that sold quills. Harry ate his vanilla. Wade ate his, which was chocolate with raisins in it, a combination Harry had firmly told him was a war crime. They didn't talk about wands. They talked about the broomstick in the window across the way, about which Wade said several rude and informed things. They talked about how Hagrid had been decent, which Wade said with the small, careful voice he used about people who had passed a test he had not told them he was giving them. They talked about what Harry would do if a boy called Draco tried it again on the train. "Don't punch him," Wade said, "unless he really, really earns it, and if he earns it, punch him like I taught you, in the short ribs. Don't break his nose is his pride. If you break his nose, he becomes an enemy for life. If you wind him in the short ribs, he becomes a complicated friend for life. That's a distinction. Life, kid, is distinctions." Afterward, they walked to the Leaky Cauldron and out through the Leaky Cauldron and out into Muggle London, where Wade hailed a cab because he said the night bus made him motion sick, and because he wanted, he said, to get one long look at the city with the boy before the boy went off to school. They went to King's Cross. They walked the station. Wade pointed out with the professional eye of a man who had once lost a gunfight in a station similar to this one, the security cameras, the blind spots, the exits that weren't on the maps. Harry noted each without comment. They ate pretzels. They bought a paper bag of apples for no reason and ate them on the steps. On the platform before the empty platform, a platform numbered 9, and beside it another numbered 10, and the small useful space between, Wade turned Harry by the shoulders to look at him. "I love you, kid. I love you, Wade. We have 2 weeks before you leave me. I'll be fine. Oh, I know you'll be fine. I don't care if you'll be fine. That's not the question. I'm working on whether I'll be fine. That's my one. I'm taking it away. It's mine. You'll be fine. Shut up. I love you." He pulled Harry into a hug in the middle of King's Cross Station, a hug with katanas in it, and ignored the several commuters who noticed, and he held it for the right amount of time and no longer. "Also," he said into Harry's hair, "listen to me, Harry. When you go through that wall in September and you go to the castle and you meet the old man, you listen, you look, you nod, you do not trust him, you do not mistrust him, you watch. I know, he loves people, Harry. I'll give him that, he loves people, but he loves them like an old general loves soldiers. Don't get me wrong, he's cried over every one of them, real tears, but he'll still send them up the hill. I won't go up the hill, damn right you won't. I'll walk around it, or burn it, or burn it. That's my boy." Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. The Sorting Hat's bad day. The Hogwarts Express was red and steaming and loud in a way that old trains are loud, and it was, Harry decided as he climbed aboard, more beautiful than it had any right to be. Wade stood on the platform outside his window, a man in a civilian coat with the wrong shoulders, waving with the kind of expansive fake casualness that Wade used when he was not, in fact, fine. Harry waved back. Wade pulled out a handkerchief the size of a small pillowcase and made a great showy noise into it. Harry laughed. Wade mouthed, "Kill all your enemies," and made finger guns. Then the train pulled out of the station and the platform slid away, and Harry Potter, for the first time in his life, was entirely alone, for about 11 seconds. "Excuse me," said a girl in the corridor, "have you seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one." Harry turned. A girl about his age stood with her hand on his compartment door. She had a cloud of brown hair, a crease of concentration between her eyebrows, a Hogwarts uniform already perfectly pressed and pinned, and a book under her arm the size of a paving stone. "No toad," he said, "but I'll keep an eye out. Thank you." She hesitated. Her gaze moved across his face, very thoughtful, and lit for a quarter of a second on his forehead. "It's real," Harry said pleasantly. "I didn't, you were going to, it's fine." She flushed and then laughed at herself. Hermione Granger, I'm Muggle-born and I've already read all our course books twice and I have 400 questions which I promise I will not ask you all at once. Do you mind if I sit? Only Ron Weasley is in the next compartment over and he's very loud and I think he thinks I'm a lot. Please sit. Thank you. Have you no sorry I said I wouldn't okay. Let me just. She sat. She set the book on her lap. She took 3 very small, measured breaths. Harry, he offered. I know, sorry, I know. It's okay. I'm not going to make a whole thing of it. Thank you. A moment later, a red-haired boy with a smudge on his nose appeared in the doorway, apologetic, hopeful, already a little embarrassed. Mind if everywhere else is full, Ron Weasley, I presume, Harry said. Hermione said you were loud. She would. I like loud. Oh, all right then. The 3 of them made short work of becoming polite acquaintances, and then, somewhere in the second hour, friends. Hermione knew the history of the castle, the rules of the tournament that had not been held in 200 years, the exact incantation for Wingardium Leviosa she had practiced on quills in her bedroom, and the full Latin declension of half a dozen spells, and she was fighting, Harry could see her fighting, to keep it all behind her teeth. Ron knew the politics of every Quidditch team in the country, and the middle names of every player, knew the insides of his older brothers better than his brothers knew themselves, and had eaten 3 chocolate frogs in 10 minutes without letting anyone see him chew. Had also, Harry noted, given the crust of his pasty to the pale sad boy next door Neville without making a show of it. Harry told them a lightly filed-down version of his life. No cabin, a house in the country, no Wade with katanas, an uncle who had raised him, a loud man, a very loud man, you'll meet him. Yes, he knew about his parents. Yes, he knew the story. Yes, he had the scar. Look, see. Hermione looked. Ron looked. Harry stood up again and sat down. Okay, he said, your turns. They told him. He listened. He asked small, careful questions that made each of them feel like the most interesting person in the room. He had spent a decade being listened to by Wade the way a king listens to his advisors, and he had learned from that listening how to do it to other people. By the time the trolley witch came through, he had an address in Ottery St. Catchpole and a postal code for a dentist's office in Hampstead in his pocket, written in round Hermione script on a scrap of parchment, and the promise that they would write him over Christmas if he didn't write them first. They met Draco Malfoy outside the compartment just past tea. Draco came in without knocking, framed by 2 larger boys with necks like baked hams. So it's true then, Draco said, what they were saying on the train. Potter has come to Hogwarts. Oh, here we go, Hermione muttered into her book. Draco, Harry said, you should be more careful about who you associate with Potter. I can help you there. He did not look at Ron. He looked past Ron at a spot on the compartment wall where Ron might have been if he had been worth looking at. Harry made a little tired face. Draco, he said, remember what we talked about in the robe shop? I remember. Good, so we're not doing this again, on this train. At all, you can come say hi when you don't have the, He nodded at the 2 big boys, the mood lighting. See you in there. Draco's eyes narrowed. Draco's mouth did a small calculating thing. He turned not stiffly but deliberately and left. The 2 boys went with him, confused. What happened in the robe shop? Ron said in an odd voice. Nothing good for him. Teach me that. You've got it already. Ron looked at Harry for a long moment with an expression somewhere between a puppy and a man who had just been given the secret to a trick. He said, best train of my life. By the time they got off at Hogsmeade, it was full dark and cold. Hagrid was there in a lantern the size of a melon, calling, first years. First years over here, and when he saw Harry his face broke open and he called Harry over by name, and the whispering all along the platform became a sound like hissing radiators. Hagrid bent down to Harry's ear and muttered, Beardo knows your common lad, I mean the headmaster. He's wanted me to say hello to ye on his behalf, and he's asked me to tell ye he's very glad indeed. Thanks, Hagrid. Is that uncle of yours here? Not here. Good. I mean he seemed well mind, but I'd prefer it with the headmaster if I'd brung him. They got into the boats. Harry and Hermione and Ron and Neville all shared one. Harry was asked by a Hufflepuff girl in the next boat whether he was really Harry Potter, and he said yes, and the Hufflepuff girl stared at him with her mouth slightly open for the whole of the crossing. The castle, when it appeared, was enormous. It was enormous in a way that was not only about size. The turrets climbed up against the stars, candles burned in high narrow windows. The whole thing was crouched on the rock the way a cat crouches on a ledge, and it was watching them come, and it was old. Harry had been raised in a cabin built by a man with no manners. He had never seen anything built with so much arrogance. He loved it instantly. It's a lot, Ron whispered. It's a lot, Harry agreed. I've read about it, Hermione said. It was the tiniest voice Harry had heard out of her yet. They climbed up. Professor McGonagall met them at the door. She was tall and green-robed and sharp as a rule, and her gaze moved across them like a torch and came to rest on Harry and did not stay there long, which Harry respected. The antechamber outside the great hall was full of ghosts and first years and nerves. Harry stood with his friends, and his heart was a reasonable animal in his chest. He had practiced not having a fast heart in situations designed to make his heart fast. He did not have a fast heart now. The hall opened. The ceiling was sky. 4 long tables stretched away under the floating candles. The faculty table glittered at the far end. The whole school was staring. Harry walked down the central aisle with Hermione on one side and Ron on the other and Neville behind him in a small determined clump, and they stopped before a 3-legged stool on which sat a very old hat. The hat opened a kind of tear in itself and sang a song about the 4 founders. Then McGonagall read names. Abbott went first. Hufflepuff. Bones, Hufflepuff. Boot, Ravenclaw. Brocklehurst, Ravenclaw. Brown, Gryffindor. Bulstrode, Slytherin. Finch-Fletchley, Hufflepuff. Finnegan, Gryffindor. Eventually, after a long think, Granger. Hermione walked up very straight and sat on the stool with her hands in her lap, and Harry watched her and watched the hat and counted in his head. 5 seconds, 10, 15, the hat's brim twitched, 20, 22, 23, Gryffindor, a cheer. Hermione's face, quickly controlled, was briefly the face of someone who had been given a prize she had not dared to want. Longbottom, Neville. Neville sat a long time. Gryffindor at last. He walked beaming to the table, still wearing the hat. McGonagall had to call him back. Neville handed it to her, still beaming. Ron snorted into his fist. Malfoy, Draco. Draco sat down. The hat touched his head. The hat said Slytherin almost before it had settled. Draco swanned to his table with the ease of a person who had known his destination before he had left the house. Potter, Harry. The hall did not go silent so much as shift its weight. Every person in every row leaned a fraction forward. The candles above did not move. Professor Dumbledore, who had been leaning his temple on his palm, lifted his head. His eyes, pale blue, uncomplicated-looking bad liars, went at Harry. They widened briefly, they contracted. Harry did not let himself notice the old man watching him. He walked to the stool. He sat. McGonagall set the hat on his head. The hat fell down over his eyes. The world went warm and dark. "Oh," said the Sorting Hat in Harry's head. Oh my goodness." Harry waited. I am not, I confess, accustomed to." "Take your time," Harry thought politely. "There are 2 of you in here." "Oh, there is a, oh, hello, old friend. Excuse me. Sorry, there is a piece of something else here. I will not touch it. It is not mine to touch. It is unwell. Never mind. I am here for the rest of you." "The rest of you, Mr. Potter, is, well, you have been raised, haven't you, by a very loud man." "Yes, I can hear him. I can hear him even from here. He is, goodness, he is laughing at me. He is laughing at me even though he is not in this room. How is he doing that? I don't know. Number well where to put you. You are brave, yes, a great deal of quiet brave and some very loud brave when required. You are clever, yes, sharp, no taste for showing it, which is itself clever. You are loyal, oh goodness me, yes, you are loyal as a dog to that man and to 2, 3, 4 of these children already. You are ambitious, yes, you are. You don't know you are yet, but you want to do things and you want to do them well, and that is a cousin to ambition. Gracious. You are each of the 4 things. You are each of them. This is highly irregular. What do the other hats do?" "There are no other hats." "Oh, this is awkward. I have been asked before. I do not usually, normally I would say Slytherin. For such a mind as this, there is a great deal you could do in Slytherin. I'd prefer not. I know you don't have to say, I can. Oh, hello, that was very clear. Thank you. Not Slytherin. All right. Well, Ravenclaw, your mind would blossom there. It'll blossom wherever you put it. It will at that. Hufflepuff. I like Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff would love you." "I'd love Hufflepuff, but it would not stretch you." "Gryffindor, then." Only because your friends are there and because you are going to need them, Mr. Potter. You are going to need friends and you are going to need a place to come home to at the end of the day. And because in Gryffindor, Mr. Potter, they will not ask you to be anything other than what your man in his loud red suit has already made you. Which is," the hat paused delicately, "a difficult young man to put anywhere at all." "Thank you. Don't thank me. It has been a bad day for hats. Gryffindor." The last word was a yell into the hall. The Gryffindor table came apart at the seams. Ron and Hermione and Neville were jumping up and down and shouting, and the twins, Ron's brothers, were doing a 2-man cheer that involved a lot of coordinated whooping, and Harry, who had not let his heart be fast, let it be fast for a moment now. He walked to his table and sat down next to Hermione, and Hermione grabbed his forearm and squeezed it once hard, as if she wanted to make sure he was real. Up at the high table, the old man with the silver beard was watching him. He raised his goblet very slightly. Harry nodded slightly and turned to his food. "Bad day for hats," Hermione whispered, flushed with delight. "What did it mean? I think it thought I was going to be easy." "Is that a compliment? I have no idea." On either side of Dumbledore along the high table sat an assortment of professors, and Harry took inventory of them as if he were counting the exits in a room. McGonagall, stern but pleased, Hagrid beaming down the far end. A tiny man perched on a stack of cushions, Flitwick, Hermione murmured, head of Ravenclaw. A round, squat woman in robes the color of leaf mold, Sprout. A turbaned young man whose head jerked very slightly, as though a small bell had gone off inside it, Quirrell. And beside Quirrell, a man in a black coat with hair like spilled ink and eyes like a cat that had not been petted in a long time. The man in the black coat was staring at Harry. He did not look away when Harry met his gaze. He kept staring. His mouth was a straight line. His hand on the table was very still. Harry, who had been trained in holding the eye of people who were staring at him on purpose, held the stare calmly and after a moment nodded once at the man. The man did not nod back. His mouth twitched a fraction, not a smile, the ghost of something more complicated, and then he looked down and took a long, slow sip of his wine. The first faint buzz started at the back of Harry's neck at that moment, not about the man in black but about the man in the turban beside him. Not a sound, a smell. It came to him as a tilt in the room, a wrongness that his nose recognized before his mind did. Wade had spent long years teaching Harry to smell for trouble. It smelled, he had said, like ozone and old leather and wet matches. It smelled like that now. It came off Quirrell in a thin, sharp note, as though something behind the man's face were exhaling. Harry filed this. He turned back to his plate. "Who's the one in the black?" he murmured to Hermione. "Professor Snape, potions, head of Slytherin." The book said, "Okay, thanks. Why? No reason." Dumbledore's end-of-feast speech was short and kindly and contained a genial warning about the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side, which was, he said, out of bounds to anyone who did not wish to die a very painful death. Ron, beside Harry, laughed. Harry didn't. "He's serious," Harry said. "He can't be." "He's serious, Ron," Percy Weasley, a gangly prefect at the other end of the table, overheard. "Just a joke, I'm sure." He said it in a careful, adult voice. "Sure," Harry said. That first night he sat up late in the round, red common room with Hermione and Ron, a small fire burning in the grate, and wrote a letter to Wade on a piece of Hogwarts parchment. "Dear Wade," he wrote, "I'm in Gryffindor. The hat had a bad day. I made 3 friends. Their names are Hermione, Ron, and Neville. Hermione has read all the books. Ron thinks you'd be loud. Neville lost a toad. There's a man named Snape who looks at me like he's trying to decide something. There's a man named Quirrell who smells wrong. There's a corridor we're not supposed to go into. I know, I won't. Tell the sheep hello. I love you, Harry." He sent the letter with an owl he rented from a stand in the common room. Hermione had made him send it in cash. He slept that first night on the other side of a red curtain, in a bed that was not his own, and he dreamed briefly of a cold small thing in the dark of his head. It said, "You can be great, you know." Harry, turning in his bed, told it in a sleep-thick voice to get stuffed, and did not remember in the morning that it had come at all. His first 2 weeks at Hogwarts passed in a blur of lessons, lost corridors, Hermione's arm insistently taking him by the elbow to class on the correct side of the moving staircase, and the slow, happy ache of making new friends on purpose. He was good at his classes. He was very good at transfiguration, because Wade had taught him about objects and the shapes of them. He was surprisingly good at charms, because Wade had taught him Latin. He was, to his own embarrassment, very, very good at potions, which bothered no one at his table except Professor Snape, whose face, when he circulated past Harry's cauldron on the first Thursday of term, went briefly through several weathers. Snape stopped in front of Harry at the end of that first potions class. "Potter," he said. "Yes, sir, you have a talent for potions." "Thank you, sir. Your father had none." "All right, sir. Your mother had a great deal." "So I've been told, sir." "By whom?" "My uncle, sir." "Who didn't know her but has read about her in the way people like us read about things." "People like you." "Yes, sir." "Potter, you will not, I think, be insolent to me the way other boys your age might be insolent to me." "No, sir." "Good. Permission to be insolent about other professors, sir, just so I'm clear on the rules." Snape stared at him. A thing flickered behind Snape's eyes that could have been under different light, a flicker of almost amusement. He said in the same cold voice but slightly quieter, "Detention, Potter, Friday evening, 8 o'clock, dungeons, do not be late." "Yes, sir. Do not bring anything funny." "No, sir." Out. At Friday's detention, Harry scrubbed pewter cauldrons for 2 hours without speaking. Snape graded essays at his desk without speaking. At 2 hours and 1 minute, Snape said, "Get out, Potter." Harry got out. On Friday of the next week, Snape was waiting at Harry's desk again after class, a small note in his hand, and he said without looking at him, "Your spice quantities are off. You have been trained." "Who trained you?" "My uncle, sir." "Your uncle?" "Yes, sir." "Is your uncle," Snape said very carefully, "an approved guardian of the boy Harry Potter in the eyes of the Ministry of Magic?" "I don't know, sir. I don't know what approved guardian means, sir, and neither does he, sir. But he raised me and he taught me to cook, and he'd like to meet you." Eventually, he says to tell you he has photos of you as a child and that he's saving them for the right moment. I didn't understand that, sir, but I was asked to pass it along. Snape stared at him. Snape's hand on the desk trembled once finally and went still. Get out, Potter. Yes, sir. He got out. Snape did not watch him leave. Snape sat at his desk a long time, and at some point put his palms flat on the wood, and at some point stood up and went to his window and looked out at nothing for quite a while. The summons came on a Tuesday. A small scroll delivered by a school owl at breakfast, addressed to Mr. H. Potter, Gryffindor Tower, in emerald green ink Harry had seen before. Dear Mr. Potter, it would give me great pleasure to share a cup of tea with you this afternoon in my study at 4 o'clock. Sherbet lemons will be provided. A Dumbledore. Hermione read it over his shoulder. What's the password? It'll be the name of a sweet. How do you know? I've been told. By whom? Someone who knows. Harry went to the gargoyle at 4. He said, sherbet lemon, on a guess. The gargoyle moved aside. Professor Dumbledore's office was round and warm and lined with instruments that ticked and puffed. A great red gold bird sat on a perch at the side. The man himself stood at the window, half-turned, in robes the color of old wine. Harry, thank you for coming. Headmaster, please, Albus if you like. Headmaster, Harry said evenly. Ah, as you wish, sit. Tea, lemon. Harry sat. Harry took a lemon because a lemon was offered, and to refuse it would have been to start the fight a minute earlier than he wanted. He put the lemon in his pocket for later. He sat with his hands loose on his knees and his shoulders down and his face pleasant. I have looked for you, Dumbledore said, for 10 years. I know. Did your uncle tell you why? He told me why you were looking. I don't know yet if I agree with your why. Ah, he also told me you would offer me lemons and tell me kind things and ask me small questions that felt like nothing and put the answers in a long ledger in your head. I'm not going to be rude to you, Headmaster. I'd like us to like each other. But I want you to know that my uncle told me and I listened and I was trained by a man who knew you'd try it and how to notice it. Dumbledore sat down behind his desk slowly. He steepled his fingers. He smiled, a small, unguarded, almost delighted smile that turned the lines around his eyes into a pleased small fan. Well, he said, yes, sir. I should say that is exactly what I hoped he had done and exactly what I feared he had done. Sir, Harry, I am an old man. I have made a great many mistakes, more than I would tell even you. I will tell you just now that I had a plan for you. It was not a cruel plan. It was not the kindest plan. It had stones in it that I wish I had not been willing to put there. Your uncle, Mr. Wade, Mr. Wilson, I am given to understand, took you off the path I had laid. He made you into a boy I did not expect. I am more than you know relieved. Harry was quiet. You must have questions. Please, ask me. I will answer what I can answer, and I will, today, be very honest about what I cannot. Why did you want me at my aunt's? Blood wards. Your mother's love is a very particular protection. It needed a house where her blood lived. That's a reason. Is it the reason? Dumbledore paused. It is a reason. It is not all of the reason. The other part is that I wished you to grow up without fame. I grew up without fame. You did, just not in the house I had chosen. Did you know what the aunt and uncle were like? A long silence. I knew they were not kind people. Did you know how not kind? I hoped. That's not an answer. I feared. That's closer. Yes, it is closer. What's the other part? I beg your pardon. You said there was a blood ward. You said there was the fame. You said those were 2 parts. What's the third? Dumbledore looked at him for a long moment. You are clever, Harry. I had a good teacher. I don't think I can answer the third part today. All right, Harry. It's all right, sir. I just wanted you to know I knew there was a third part. I am very glad you came to tea. Thank you for the lemon. He stood up and walked out. At the door he turned. Headmaster, yes, one of your professors smells wrong. I'd keep an eye on him. Dumbledore's face went very still. Which one? You'll know, Harry said and left. The matter of Professor Quirrell remained unspoken between them through September and most of October. Harry watched Quirrell in defense against the dark arts with the same slow professional patience Wade had trained him in, not staring, glancing, noting. Quirrell's stutter thickened around ordinary words and thinned around old ones. He never turned his back on any of them for long. He kept the window closed even when the room was warm. He smelled always of ozone and old leather and wet matches, and the smell came most strongly whenever his turban was closest to any of the students at the back of the room. Harry, who sat at the back, made a point of sitting at the end of the row furthest from the door, facing it. Ron and Hermione, who had noticed he did this, sat with him without asking why. On the last Friday of October, the first real frost came. On the Saturday night Halloween, the hall was decked with pumpkins bigger than Hagrid's head, and the ghosts had been talked into a floor show, and the feast had gone on for an hour when Professor Quirrell burst through the great doors with his turban skewed and his stutter gone. Troll in the dungeons thought you ought to know. He fainted. In the uproar that followed, Dumbledore ordered all prefects to take their houses to the dormitories. Harry had by then stood up. He had been looking down the hall. He had noticed Hermione was not at the Gryffindor table. "Where's Hermione?" he said. "Oh God," Ron said in the voice Ron used when he realized a thing he had meant to forget. Oh God, she was in the bathroom. I said a thing at lunch. It was mean. I said a thing. Up," Harry said. "What, up with me now?" They moved against the tide out of the hall, down a side corridor, up a staircase that for once, unusually, did not choose to move for them. Harry's heart was working steadily. His hand was on the hilt of the small silver letter opener he had carried in his sleeve since the first day of term for no reason he had named aloud. He had not drawn a blade on a person in his life. He had drawn blades on a great many targets. They heard the girl's bathroom before they saw it, a crash, a splash, a small, sharp, cut-off scream. The door hung half off its hinges. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of troll, and Wade had taught him this smell too, wet rotten meat and unwashed skin, and an animal fear that had somehow forgotten to be afraid of anything. The troll was hideous and enormous, 12 feet of knotted muscle and bone, swinging a club the size of a log. Hermione was pressed in the corner of a half-smashed stall, her hands up over her head, her eyes huge. Harry did not yell. Yelling, Wade had said, would make the troll swing at the yell. He walked in low and fast along the wall under the swing of the club, and he took a small flat whistle out of his breast pocket and blew it once sharp, so close to the troll's ear that the troll reeled. The troll turned, the troll swung. Harry was already moving. He slid under the swing. He went behind the troll on the ball of one foot, the way Wade had drilled into him on the wet grass behind the cabin 1,000 times, not slow, not fast, not hurried, not late. He climbed the troll. He did not climb it the way a monkey climbs a tree. He climbed it the way a repairman climbs a cell tower, bolt by bolt, economical. He reached the back of the troll's head. He pulled out of his sleeve the little letter opener. He set the tip of it against the soft hinge at the base of the troll's skull where the muscle made a Y, and he did not drive it home. He only pressed very lightly. "Drop the club," he said calmly, "or I push this in. You understand me, troll, do you?" The troll, who was not bright, dropped the club. "Good, now you are going to sit down." The troll sat down. The sitting down shook the floor and dislodged a sink. "Now you are going to close your eyes." The troll closed its eyes. Its tiny brain had decided that sitting and closing its eyes was the least painful of the available options, which was, Harry suspected, the most any troll brain had ever done in this position. Hermione stared at him. Her hands were still over her head. He waved her forward. "Out, behind me, Ron, bring her." Ron did it. For a second he had gone white and still, as he had at the chessboard that morning in the common room when Harry had beaten him in 19 moves. And then he moved, like a man remembering how to move, and he took Hermione's elbow and drew her out toward the door. Harry counted to 10, let the tip of the letter opener still touch the troll's neck, and then stepped away in a careful backward crouch, not turning his back on the thing. At the door he turned. He walked out. He closed the broken door behind him as much as the broken door would close. Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell came around the corner at a run. McGonagall got there first. She looked into the bathroom. She looked at Harry. She looked at Hermione, who was still white, and Ron, who had a hand on Hermione's shoulder, and then back at Harry. "Mr. Potter," she said, in the crispest voice she had used in his hearing, "what in Merlin's name?" "It's alive," Harry said. "Sitting down, it's not going to hurt anybody else. I'd send Hagrid if you can, he likes them." I know, Professor, I'm sorry. We were looking for Hermione and we found her and we didn't leave her in there." "Sit down." "Yes, ma'am. Not here in my office now, all 3 of you." She got them to her office. She put them in chairs. She stood at her window with her back to them for a long minute. She turned. "Miss Granger," she said, "you will tell me in your own words what happened." I was in the bathroom because Ronald said something unkind at lunch and I was crying, Professor, and I did not hear the alarm and the troll came in and then Harry and Ron came in and Harry climbed the troll." "He what?" "Climbed it, Professor." "Mr. Weasley, he really did climb it, Professor." "Mr. Potter." "Yes, Professor. I would like to speak to your uncle." "All right, Professor. Is your uncle available, Mr. Potter?" "I can write him, Professor." He answers letters within a day usually, Professor." "I will write him myself. Give me the address." "He doesn't have one, Professor, but owls find him. He says it's because his, never mind." McGonagall stared at him. Something in her face did a quick, difficult recalculation, and then she said, quite quietly, 5 points from Gryffindor each for being out of bounds. 50 points to Gryffindor each for not leaving your friend. Go to bed." They went to bed. 3 days later, a reply came back from Wade, addressed to Professor M. McGonagall in a handwriting that Harry recognized from the fridge. Most of it was in crayon. McGonagall, who read it at the high table in front of Snape and Flitwick, started laughing halfway through and had to put her napkin over her face. Snape, beside her, read the letter upside down and did not laugh. That same afternoon, Hedwig, the snowy owl who lived in the owlery and who had decided with the quiet authority of a cat that Harry belonged to her, dropped a small brown parcel onto Harry's plate at dinner. Inside was a letter. Kiddo, proud of you, troll level proud, stood on a troll proud. P.S. That professor of yours, the one who smells wrong, tell him hi from me. Tell him daddy's watching. Actually, don't tell him that, that's creepy. Tell him nothing. Get close to him only if you have to. There's a dark lord in your headmaster's building, bub. Yes, really. I can smell him from my cabin. Be careful, I love you. P.P.S. Also tell Severus Snape I know his mother's maiden name and I have photos. For context, no reason, love you, burn this letter. Harry did not burn the letter. Harry folded it very small and put it in his pocket. He looked up. Across the hall, Professor Snape's cold black eyes met his. Harry nodded very slightly. Snape's mouth tightened. Outside, in the dark above the castle, the cold thing in Harry's head curled smaller, listening. Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. The Philosopher's Stone. November turned into a cold, black December in the usual way of the Highlands, all at once and without apology. The lake froze at its edges. The forbidden forest in the dusk looked like a row of very tall men standing shoulder to shoulder with their heads bowed. The common room fire was always burning. Harry, Hermione, and Ron, sitting in front of it one afternoon after charms, unfolded a square of parchment between them and wrote at the top, in Hermione's careful handwriting, a single word, Quirrell. We start, Harry said, with what we know. Hermione, who had been born for the making of lists, uncapped her quill. Ron, who had not, pulled his knees up into the chair. They knew Quirrell kept the defense classroom windows closed. They knew he smelled wrong. They knew he never took his turban off. They knew his stutter thickened around the professor's names and the word Voldemort, and thinned around nothing in particular. They knew, too, from a very quiet conversation Harry had had with Hagrid in the pumpkin patch on a frosty Sunday, that a three-headed dog named Fluffy lived on the third floor, bought IM off a Greek fellow in a pub, lovely chap, and that under Fluffy was something that Dumbledore had, very temporarily, asked Hagrid to help hide. They knew Quirrell had gone back to the third-floor corridor twice that week alone, late, on his own. They knew something, was trying very hard to get down through the trapdoor to whatever was under Fluffy. And they knew because Harry had told them by the common room fire one night about a short conversation his uncle had had with him in a letter. He said there's a dark lord in the building, Ron said for the third time in 2 weeks. He did, Harry said, in this building. Yes, Ron, right, Ron swallowed. Well, that do it, Harry tapped the parchment. So here's what we are not going to do. We are not going down the trapdoor, not yet, not ever if we don't have to. Wade's rule, you do not break into a dungeon because it is there. You break into a dungeon because somebody with a stamp collection has hidden something in it, and you need the stamp. We don't need the stamp, Hermione said. We don't need the stamp. So what do? We watch, we triangulate, we wait for him to make a move, and we pass the word up. Up to whom? Up the chain. Harry, the chain ends with Dumbledore. The chain, Harry said after a moment, ends with Wade. They told Dumbledore twice, in writing, once a short note through McGonagall's intercession, once a slightly longer note slid quietly under Dumbledore's gargoyle one evening when nobody was looking. The responses came back in the form of warm acknowledgments and not very much else. Dumbledore, Harry realized with a slow, chilly calm, was not going to stop this chain because Dumbledore wanted to see how the chain played out. And so Harry wrote to Wade. He did not say everything. He said enough. He said the professor. He said he smells more every week. He said the old man knows and is watching and is not moving. He said, I am not going underground. I am not an idiot. I am telling you because you told me to tell you. Love, Harry. He sent the letter on a Sunday. On Wednesday, 3 days before the end of term, Wade Wilson walked through the front door of Hogwarts. He did not walk through a back door. He did not climb in through a window. He did not disguise himself as a visiting parent or a ministry inspector or a new teacher. He walked through the front doors in his usual kit, red suit, 2 katanas, pistols, pouches, the lot of it, at a brisk, cheerful, angelic pace, looked around at the entrance hall with open delight, whistled, and said, loudly enough to be heard clear up to the top of the marble stairs, "Oh my God, it's a castle. This is a whole castle. I love it." Students scattered as students will. Professor McGonagall arrived within 90 seconds at a remarkable clip for a woman in her 60s in a long skirt. Mr. Wilson, Minerva, hi, huge fan. Mr. Wilson, how did you get through the ramble rails? I mean ramble wards. No, you call them what they are. Wards, anti-stranger wards, right? I'm not a stranger, though, technically. I'm Harry's legal guardian, also not technically. Listen, I'll fill in the paperwork. I'm here to see the headmaster and my kid in that order. Where's his gargoyle? Mr. Wilson, you will put those weapons. I will. Let me see the old man first. I'll hand them over at the door, I promise. I'll even smile. I'll do the thing where I look pleasant. Watch, here it is. He did it with his mouth, though not his eyes. There you go. Where's the gargoyle? Follow me. He followed her. He waved at every child he passed on the way, including a pair of sixth-year Slytherins who fled. At the gargoyle, McGonagall said, almost through her teeth, "Lemon sherbet. Love it. Cute." She let him up. She left him at the door. Dumbledore was standing behind his desk when Wade came in. The great red gold bird, Fawkes, was watching both of them with the kind of calm that meant everybody in the room who mattered already knew everything. "Mr. Wilson, thank you for coming." "I have been expecting me, Dumbledore. Yeah, I know. Can we skip the opening? I'll do the lemon thing in a minute. I'll suck a lemon for you. We can have a moment. First, I'm going to be annoyed at you, and then we're going to figure out what we're doing about Moldywort in your back room, and then I'll have the lemon. Please sit. Nah, I'll stand. Safer. You are safe here, Wade. I'm safe everywhere, Albus. I'm a hard kill. I have heard. From who? A great many sources. Okay, sit if you want. I'll stand. I will sit." Dumbledore sat. He set his palms flat on the desk, fingers spread, and looked at Wade with an attention that was not, for once, full of kindness. It was full of interest. Wade, whose job it had long been to know which attention was which, found that the interest was, so far, the better deal. "You took the boy," Dumbledore said. "I did. From a doorstep. I did. You watched me do it, or your cat did. Minerva is a peach. We've had nothing but delightful interactions. I'd die for her. You put the letter in a drain. I did. You raised him. I did. You did not raise him the way I would have raised him. No, I did not. You raised him better." Wade did not say anything for a very long beat. "The thing is, Albus," he said finally, in a voice that was not his performing voice and was not a voice Harry had ever heard or was likely to hear, "I would love to tell you off. I have been rehearsing the telling off for 10 years. I have a whole bit. I've got material. It kills. I've got a whole section on the blood ward, that is, chef's kiss, and I'm not going to do any of it. Why not? Because, old man, I'm going to need you after we have this one conversation to be on our side, and if I do the full tell-off, you will spend the next 8 years feeling bad about something I already know you feel bad about, which is a waste of a perfectly good guilt trip. So here is the short version. You put a baby on a doorstep so that the sad, hard boy he'd grow into would be easier for you to aim. I took the baby off the doorstep so that the happy, hard boy he'd grow into would be harder for anybody to aim. Made a plan in which your greatest asset died for you. I made a plan in which my greatest asset lives for me. My plan beats your plan because my plan doesn't kill the asset. Also, my plan is more fun. Any questions? 1. Shoot. You know what I knew. The Horcrux in the scar. Yes. And you know what I didn't tell him. Yes, Albus, I know what you didn't tell him. I would like you not to tell him. Oh, I'm going to tell him today. I'm going to tell him in front of you. You are going to sit there in your chair and you are going to watch me tell him, and you are going to hear yourself in my voice when I say the words, and then you are going to look him in the eye and you are going to tell him the part that I can't tell him because it is your part. That is the deal. You want me on your side against Tommy Riddle. You sit in your chair and you take your medicine. Nod. Dumbledore nodded. Good. Mr. Wilson. Wade, I know we don't do that part. We don't do the apology part here. You can apologize to him if he'll let you. He probably won't. He's stubborn. He gets that from me. Move on. What do you want to do about your teacher? I have been waiting, watching. I have been giving him enough rope. I have a stone under a trapdoor, under a dog, under a puzzle chain designed by the 4 heads of House and Flitwick. I know you wrote a book. I read the book. The book is terrible. The book is a love letter to your own ego, Albus. The stone is bait. Fine, that's not my favorite choice, but it's a choice. But the troll on Halloween was him. The thinning hair and spine chills on your professor are him. Every kid in the corridor tonight is the tuition bill you're running up. You can't run that bill forever. You hear me? I'll help, but we do this before the holidays, not after. Tonight. I smelled him from the gate, Albus. He's about to move. He probably got a delivery this afternoon, something from Nicholas Flamel's private vault. He's going down the trapdoor tonight. I'd bet a leg. He's going to miss exactly one thing in your love letter because nobody ever gets the mirror right the first time. That's the one, right? I'm guessing it's the mirror. You are unsettlingly good at this. I've done it before. Different building, same rows, as they say. Very well. You will stay in this tower. You will be visible. You will send a lovely slow-moving owl to your wife or whoever, and you will pretend you are not on the premises. You will not go down that trapdoor with me, because if you do, he'll hear you coming. You have all the subtlety of a brass band, Albus. No offense. None. I will take Harry and his friends. You will not. I will take Harry and his friends. Wade, you will not take children into Albus. They're already in there. I'm not taking them. They're walking in on their own. My Harry has been, I can see it in his letters, this close to going down that trap himself for a week. The thing I can do is go with him. The thing you can do, old friend, is lift your wards quietly in the corridor at 9 o'clock and then sit up here and drink your tea. Do your job, let me do mine. When it gets ugly, I'll call you. You come running. Deal, deal. Say it out loud. Deal. Now, Harry. Wade opened the office door and yelled down the stair. Harry Potter, second year ER, I mean first year, get up here. You're not in trouble. I just mean we're in trouble, all of us. Come up. Harry, who had been waiting in the corridor below with Hermione and Ron clutching his elbows, they had run to the entrance hall when they'd heard the shout, came up the stair 3 at a time. When he saw Wade in Dumbledore's office, his face did a small, complicated thing. Uncle Wade, hi, kiddo. Hi, I'm not dying. I'm not here to take you home. I'm here because I had a bad feeling and because you had a bad feeling and those feelings are compatible. And we are going to do a thing tonight and your headmaster and I have talked it through like grown-ups and he's going to sit in this tower and behave himself. Bring your friends up. Harry did. Hermione and Ron entered looking respectively terrified and exhilarated. Wade looked them each in the eye and shook their hands. Hermione, Ron, I know you from letters. You're the clever, you're the brave. I love both of you already. I'm going to embarrass you publicly at some point, and I'm going to leave it to Harry to describe me to you afterwards. Right now, Harry, sit down. I've got something to tell you. Harry sat. Wade told him about the Horcrux. He told him with a professional tenderness that Harry, later, would remember better than he remembered the words. He told him first what a Horcrux was, the shape of the idea, the sin of it, the old rot around the edges of the word. He told him, second, that the thing that had whispered to him at the edges of sleep for years was a fragment of another man's soul, hooked into his head by accident, on the night that man had tried to kill him. He told him, third, that he, Wade, had known since he had picked up Harry on the doorstep, because it had smelled wrong even then, and he had chosen to carry the knowledge, and he was telling Harry now because it was time. He told him, fourth, that Albus Dumbledore had known too, and had kept the same secret for the same number of years, and that Harry could ask Albus Dumbledore why any time in the next 10 minutes, and Dumbledore was required by a deal struck across this desk to tell him. Harry did not cry, Harry did not look surprised. Harry, and this broke Wade's heart a little, because it was what he had been raised to do, put his hands in his lap and thought. Is that why you wanted me on Privet Drive? He said to Dumbledore after a moment, so I'd be easier to ask to die when the time came. Dumbledore, to his credit, did not look away. Yes, thank you for saying so. Harry, there are other ways now. We're not doing the other ways part yet. I want to sit with the first part. Of course, Harry sat with it. He looked out the tower window at the cold black lake. He turned the scar under his fringe with one finger. He glanced at Hermione. He glanced at Ron. He glanced at Wade. Okay, he said at last. Later I'm going to be angry about this, headmaster. Right now I'm busy. Later. As you wish. Wade. Yeah, kiddo. Tonight. Tonight, the three of us, me, all four of us. Ron, who had gone absolutely still throughout, swallowed and said, Yes, sir. Ron, Wade said, I am so not a sir. Yes, sir. Good boy, we'll break you of it. At 9:05 they were on the third-floor corridor. The door at the end was ajar. Wade pushed it open with the toe of his boot. Fluffy was in the middle of the room, all three of his heads staring at the trapdoor, which was also open. A small harp, untuned, set down very neatly to one side, was still playing a tune that Harry vaguely recognized as a lullaby. Oh, Wade said softly. Oh, buddy. Oh, sweetheart. Oh, who's a good boy, who's a very complicated boy, come here, he hummed. He hummed the same lullaby, but in Wade's hum it was stranger and older, and the middle head of Fluffy turned and looked at him with an expression very close to confusion. The left head kept watching the trapdoor. The right head yawned. Wade kept humming. He walked slowly, eyes down, to the trapdoor. He did not turn his back on the dog. He eased Harry and Hermione and Ron around to the trapdoor's lip, one at a time, with a hand that did not stop moving in lazy, soothing circles in front of the middle head's nose. The middle head put its chin on the floor, which was an absurdly large motion, and closed its eyes. Down we go, Wade whispered. They went down. Devil's snare caught them at the bottom, of course. Hermione, who had been born for a moment like this and had been waiting for it her whole brief life, was already whispering the counterspell before she hit the ground. Lumos solemn, lumos solemn, lumos solemn. The plant recoiled in a kind of vegetable horror. They dropped free onto hard stone. Best spell of the night, Granger, Wade said. Dinosaur roar, give that girl an award. Hermione, flushed, kept moving. The next chamber was full of small brass keys with wings. Tiny, complicated, silver-winged, quick. A row of brooms stood by the wall. At the far side, a heavy wooden door. Keys, Wade said. We don't need keys, Harry said. Watch. He pulled from his belt a thin black tool that was not a key and was not a wand. He knelt at the wooden door. He worked the lock for 9 seconds. The door clicked open. Ah, Wade said proudly, that's my boy. Wade teaches breaking and entering, Harry explained to Hermione, who looked briefly as though she might faint. We will, Hermione said carefully, talk about that later. They did not break the key puzzle. They did not fly the brooms. Harry picked the lock and they all walked through like sensible people. Wade, behind them, put a hand to his heart and said, "Oh, that is so satisfying. I love a practical MC." Chess set was the first place Wade made them stop. Ron looked up. "No, no chess. I know your book, Albus. I read it on the toilet. I am not sending a boy to ride a horse to get cracked in the head so his friends can cross the board. We're walking around. Ron, can you move the horses?" "Without playing the game, can you?" I can ask them." "Ask them. Tell them we're not playing. Tell them there is no game tonight. Tell them we mean them no harm. Tell them you respect their craft." Ron, who was a thoroughly Weasley boy and therefore good at speaking to horses in his own head, walked up to the White Queen and in a voice Harry had never heard him use, said quite politely, "Madam, with respect, we are not here to play. May we pass?" The White Queen stared at him for a long, cold second. Then she turned her head and nodded once, heavy and slow, and the rest of the pieces on both sides, to Harry's astonishment, parted like a silk rope being drawn open. Ron walked through first. Harry followed. Hermione put a hand on one of the White Knight's flanks in wonder. Wade last saluted the Black Queen on the way past. "I love a lady with taste," he said. The troll, when they came to it, was already unconscious. Someone had gotten there first. "Nice of him," Wade muttered. Hermione's potions puzzle was quick. She did not crow about it. She solved it the way she had solved the devil's snare, like a girl who had been practicing in secret for this her whole life and would not waste the moment. Beyond the flames was the last room. Wade stopped them at the threshold. "Kid, listen to me. I'm listening. He's in there, your guy, his guy, the head in the turban. The thing hitching a ride. He's going to talk to you. He's going to be smarter than you expect. He's going to try to sell you something. He is going to offer you your parents. If you listen to him for 10 seconds, he's going to make a small, honest point about something, because he's not stupid, because he is in his way extremely clever, and you are going to feel the smallest of pulls. That pull is the hook. Do not grab the hook. I won't. I know you won't. I'm saying it so that when I'm not saying it, you can hear me saying it. Okay, one more thing. You don't have to be the one to finish him tonight. You can be the decoy. I can be the hammer. We don't have to do it your way or the book's way. We do it my way, which is, whoever gets the shot takes the shot and the other one covers. Hermione and Ron, you stay at this doorway. That's an order." Wade, Ron started. "It's an order, Ron. I'll take the shouting from you later." They nodded. They stayed. Harry and Wade walked into the chamber together. Quirrell was at the mirror of Arist. He was not hunched. He was standing quite straight. His turban was off. In its place, above his own thin, sharp face, was a second face, flat, white, red-eyed, pressed against the back of his skull as if it were trying to become a mask. The red eyes moved. They moved to Harry. They found him. "Potter," said the face on the back of Quirrell's head, in a voice like thin, dry paper. "Harry Potter, I have wondered." "Hi," Harry said pleasantly. "You have grown. You were a small thing when the voice laughed a noise that was not a laugh. Last took an interest. "I've been told. I am not here to kill you tonight, Harry Potter. I am here for the stone. Okay, do not interrupt me. Sorry, habit. You have," the voice said, "been raised by a clown." "I've been raised," Harry said, "by the single scariest man I have ever met, who is currently standing behind me and who you have not yet introduced yourself to, which he considers rude." "Howdy," Wade said. "Stand aside, clown." "Nope," the voice ignored him. "Harry Potter, I offer you your parents. I can see the shape of their faces in you. I knew them. I was there. Join me and—" "No, thank you. I offer you power. I offer you—" "No, thank you." "The stone, Harry Potter. I need the boy to look into the mirror. Give me the stone. Give me the stone. Give me—" "Oh, is that it?" Harry said pleasantly. "You need me at the mirror." "Yes, come." "All right." He walked to the mirror. Wade beside him did not move. Wade had settled his weight onto the balls of his feet. Wade's right hand was on the hilt of the short blade at his belt. Wade's face was mild. Harry stood in front of the mirror. He did not look at it. He had been practicing not looking at mirrors with Wade for 8 years, a specific drill, because Wade had gotten tired long ago of his own reflection, and he had not wanted the boy to inherit it. "Look," hissed the voice. Harry looked. He saw nothing more than his own reflection, looking slightly to the left of where he was standing, with a pair of red eyes in the back of its hair. "I see myself," he said. "Look harder." He looked. He thought hard about something simple, the feeling of a chimichanga in his hand at 4 years old, the smell of Wade's cedar chest, the sheep at the fence, the teacup walking itself across the table to him the day he had first moved one without meaning to. He thought about the stone, not because he wanted it, but because Wade had told him that the mirror gave up its treasures to those who did not want them. Something cool and heavy slid into his pocket. "You have it," hissed the voice. "Number, you have it. Give it to me." "I don't have it." "Give it." "I don't have it." "Liar," hissed the voice. "He lies, master, he lies." "Let me," said the voice from the back of Quirrell's head, and Quirrell turned. His face, when he turned, was the face of a man who had been slowly eaten from the inside out and who had a moment ago been grateful. The face of Lord Voldemort on the back of his skull fixed both its red eyes on Harry. Harry Potter, it said quite calmly, do not lie to me. Oh, I'm lying. Give me the stone. Come and get it. Wade moved. He did not move on the face. He did not move on Quirrell. He moved instead on something Harry had not seen, a thin shape of smoke in the rafters that had been slipping along the ceiling toward Harry's back. He cut it out of the air with a short, clean motion and a hiss of something singed, and he moved his boot just a little, so that Harry saw Quirrell behind him and not in front of him, and in the brief moment that Quirrell's face was in the back of the room and his own face was toward the front of the room, Harry did the trick. The trick was a throwing knife. The trick was a decoy. The trick was a small round metal button on a cord that Wade had taught him to throw like a yo-yo when he was 9, which made, when it was flicked, exactly the sound of a man clearing his throat. The sound clicked from the doorway behind them. Quirrell, reflexively, because he was still a man, and men turn when they hear a man at the door, turned his front face toward the doorway, which meant his Voldemort face turned toward Harry, which meant the bare back of his own head was exactly where Harry had been waiting for it to be. Harry pressed the flat of his hand to Quirrell's neck hard, where the thin, sharp back of the skull met the raw base of the turban-red mark. Quirrell's neck began at once to smoke. The Voldemort face screamed. Voldemort had not expected Harry's touch to burn him. Voldemort had not expected the touch to burn him because Voldemort had not known what Wade had known in the first 3 hours of Harry's new life. That the love his mother had laid in his skin on the night of her death had not been given to the boy by a safe house or by a blood ward. It had been given to the boy by a man who had carried him every day for 10 years and watered it and kept it alive. Quirrell screamed too. Quirrell tried to throw Harry off. Quirrell dropped to the stone, rolling, desperate. Wade stepped forward. Wade put his boot on Quirrell's shoulder, carefully. Wade drew his short blade and laid the flat of it against the back of Quirrell's neck, exactly at the place where the Voldemort face met the ordinary skin and did not cut. He laid it there and he pressed only very slightly. Harry, Wade said quietly. Yes, your scar. Harry's scar was hot. His scar was very hot. He could feel for the first time the thin shape of the thing that had whispered at him on the edges of sleep for 10 years, the thing that had told him, just the once, about his mother, uncoiling, rearing up inside his skull, trying to reach out of him and into the man on the floor and through the man on the floor and away. I feel it, Harry said. It's going to try to jump. I feel it. When I say, Harry put his hand to his own scar and dug his nails into his own skin, hard, which was a thing he had been told never to do except in one specific circumstance, which Wade had drilled into him once under the pines behind the cabin, an anchor for when he needed to not lose himself, and he said out loud, in the angry voice he had said it in at 11 years old in a cold cabin kitchen, "You are a guest in my head, and I do not like you, and also I am not a lamb." Now, Wade said, Harry pulled the thing out of himself. It came out black. It came out screaming. It came out like a very old splinter finally coming up out of a very long wound. Wade did not cut Quirrell's neck. Wade caught the splinter in the air with the flat of the short blade, and he pinned it against the stone floor of the last chamber of the third-floor corridor, and he held it there, just held it, while Harry, who had dropped to a knee, pressed both his hands to the stone and said, in a voice that was not entirely his own, the name of something Hermione had taught him the word for a week before. A banishing spell, the kind of spell the book said a first-year could not cast, and the kind of spell the book was wrong about. The splinter shrieked. The splinter, after a long moment, went out. Voldemort, whose soul had been on that splinter, fled in a cloud of thin black smoke up through the rafters and into the castle walls, where it took a small piece of the castle's mortar with it and a small piece of Quirrell's last breath. Quirrell died. He died in the end, kindly. His face, for a moment before he went, was the face of a small, hopeful boy who had been given some unfair thing early and had not been brave enough to refuse it. Wade closed the man's eyes with a thumb. "Poor dumb bastard," he said softly. Harry was on his hands and knees. His scar was cold for the first time in his life. He had not known it had always been hot until it wasn't. "Wade," he said. "Yeah, kiddo. I'm tired, I know. I'm really tired, I know. Come here." Wade picked Harry up. He picked him up the way he had picked him up out of a bundle on a doorstep, one hand under the knees, one under the back, and he slung him across his shoulder and down onto his own back like an old comfortable pack, and Harry put his arms loosely around Wade's neck, and Wade walked out. Hermione and Ron met them at the chest chamber. Hermione's mouth was pressed hard against her hands. Ron's eyes were wet. Neither said anything. "He's okay," Wade said. "He did the thing. He's okay. He's tired. You two are also okay. Everybody's okay. Everybody did good tonight. Everybody." They climbed out. The door to Fluffy's room was open. Dumbledore was standing in it. He looked very, very old. "Harry," he said. "Hi, sir," Harry said from Wade's shoulder. It's out of my head, sir. The small bad thing, it's out. It's not dead, but it's out. I know, Dumbledore said. I know, I felt it go. I felt the castle give it an exit. He steadied himself. I am sorry. Later, sir. Of course. Tomorrow, sir. Of course, we'll talk tomorrow. Yes, Harry, we will. Wade carried him down the stairs. Wade carried him across the empty entrance hall. Wade carried him up to the hospital wing. Wade carried him past the fluttering of Madame Pomfrey and set him lightly on a bed, and then sat on the edge of the bed and ran one hand very gently through Harry's hair. You did good, kiddo. Harry fell asleep. Wade sat there a long time. When Madame Pomfrey asked him eventually to leave, he went to the hospital wing window and looked out at the lake, which was black and gleaming in the starlight, and stayed there with one hand flat on the glass until long after midnight. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. The Ballad of Wade. The Deadpool. Harry slept for 37 hours. He woke in the hospital wing with a Dumbledore-shaped silhouette at the foot of the bed and a Wade-shaped silhouette in the chair pulled up beside it, and he decided in the 1 second between waking up and opening his eyes which silhouette was the one he wanted to deal with first. Then he opened them. Kiddo, hi, water, here. Wade held a cup of water to Harry's mouth. Harry drank. His throat made the wretched small bird noise of throats that have been asleep. Across the bed, Dumbledore stood up. Harry, I will come back in the afternoon. I will let you wake with your stay, please, sir. Dumbledore sat. If you can, Harry said, please tell me the third part. There was a long, gentle silence in the room. The third part, Harry, is that your mother's love, the protection she laid on you the night she died, was tied to her blood. When I put you on her sister's doorstep, I was not only hiding you from the world, I was anchoring you to her. The longer you lived in a house with a woman who shared your mother's blood, the stronger the anchor became, and the harder it would be for Voldemort, in whatever shape he took, to touch you without destroying himself. The cost, I am embarrassed to say, and I will say, was that you would grow up in a house where love for you was thin, or absent. That was the price. That was the price. And you would have paid it. I would have paid it. I would have hated paying it. I would have paid it. But Wade, your uncle, Dumbledore said, did something I did not understand for a long time. He carried you, every day, for 10 years, skin to skin in the early years, always near him in the later ones. Your mother's protection was laid in you with love, Harry, not with blood. The blood was only a vessel that I thought was necessary. Your uncle poured the love back in himself daily, with a consistency I would not have believed from the reports I had of him. He kept the protection alive without the blood ward. I did not understand this. I found out, if I am being precise about it, 3 days ago, when Mr. Wilson stood in my study and very patiently explained it to me as though he were explaining a loaf of bread to a man who had never seen a loaf of bread before. Harry said, that is a fairly good word for it. Thanks. You are welcome. Wade. Yeah, kiddo, you knew this. I figured it out by the time you were 3. I didn't say anything. I didn't want you to think it was something you had to keep doing. It wasn't, you just had to exist. I was doing the work. You carried me on purpose, every day, for 10 years to keep me alive. Well, that, and also I liked you. You were a very portable baby. You fit on my hip. It was a practical arrangement. Wade. Yeah, thank you. Wade tipped his head back against the chair and covered his masked eyes with one hand. Don't, he said. Thank you. I'll cry, Harry. Thank you. Fine, crying, happy. Yes, you are a terrible child. Albus, he's a terrible child. Can you believe what he just did to me? He is, Dumbledore said very gently, the child you made, Wade. Snape came to see him that afternoon. He did not announce himself. He stood at the door of the ward for 10 seconds before Madame Pomfrey waved him in. He came to the foot of Harry's bed and stood with his hands behind his back. Wade, who had gone out to get food an hour ago, was not there. Harry was awake and sitting up against a pile of pillows. He had been writing a letter. Mr. Potter, Professor, Yes, sir, I knew your mother. I know, we were friends. I know, for a time in our youth. I know, sir, she called me Save. I didn't know that, sir. He stopped. He started again. She was a very kind girl. She was kinder than I deserved. I said something to her when we were your age that I would give a great many things to unsay. Sir, let me finish. Yes, sir. I said to her a word that young men sometimes say when they do not know that the word will make them the wrong kind of young man for the rest of their lives. She forgave me at last. She forgave me in a letter when she was already married to a man I disliked and already a mother. The letter arrived after she had died. She had written it, and she had forgotten to post it, and her husband posted it, not knowing what it was. I received it in its turn 2 weeks after I was told she was gone. I was not well that year. I did not, for a long time afterwards, I did not wish to know what she had become. I did not wish to know what her son had become. I thought of you, I will be honest, as something that had taken her. Sir, I know, let me finish. Yes, sir. I think today, Mr. Potter, that I was wrong about what her son had become. I think today that the boy who walked into my classroom in September was a boy she would be extraordinarily proud of, and that a not inconsiderable part of his being that boy is owed to a man in a mask that I find, and I cannot explain this, deeply objectionable. Sir. I am not good at this, Mr. Potter. You're doing fine, sir. I will in future treat you with the respect you have earned. Thank you, sir. I will not be kind to you. Kindness is not a thing I have very much of, but I will be fair. That'll do, sir, and if your uncle, I'll tell him to be gentle. I would appreciate it, Mr. Potter. Yes, sir. Snape stood a moment longer. He turned. He was halfway to the door when Harry said quietly, Sir. Yes, Mr. Potter. She loved you too, I think, the kind of love that's mad at you. But love. Snape, with his back to the bed, did not answer for a long time. When he did, his voice was so quiet Harry nearly missed it. Thank you, Mr. Potter. He left. Wade came back with sandwiches and was furious at himself for having missed it. Oh, I missed it. Are you kidding? I missed my whole. I had an entire Snape bit prepared, Harry. I was gonna do an entire Albus, tell him the thing I was going to do. There was an iambic pentameter. It was, listen, he's got to come back. I'll do it next time. Wade, I'll do it next time. Leave him. He deserves it. Not today. Fine. They stopped by Dumbledore's office the next morning. Harry and Wade. Dumbledore was behind his desk. A tea service was out. Lemons were present. Harry took one. He ate it this time, to Dumbledore's slight astonishment. The terms, Wade said. He had brought a folded piece of paper. He laid it on the desk. I wrote them out. I even used complete sentences. I am moved, Dumbledore said. Wade read them out anyway, line by line, with a seriousness Harry had seen maybe 3 times in his life. 1. Harry would return to Hogwarts for as long as Hogwarts remained a place Harry wished to be. Harry would not be pushed, tested, hazed, or prepared. 2. Dumbledore would not henceforth withhold information from Harry about Harry's own life. If there was a fact that pertained to Harry's safety, Harry's history, or Harry's future, Dumbledore would share it within a week of learning it, and would share it in plain sentences without significant looks. 3. Wade would be formally a consulting guardian on all matters pertaining to the boy. Wade would not attend classes. Wade would not live in the castle. Wade would not, unless the castle was on fire, intervene in day-to-day school business. 4. Wade would, however, be present at any meeting in which Harry's future was discussed. This included meetings Harry was not invited to. 5. Harry would spend Christmas and summer holidays with Wade, half-terms Harry's choice. 6. Horcrux hunting would begin in the summer, quietly, through channels. Harry would be briefed on each piece before Dumbledore put anyone in a room with it. Harry's friends, if Harry wished them included, would be included, with the knowledge of their parents, with a preference for truth. 7. Voldemort was not dead. Voldemort was not coming back tomorrow. Voldemort would come back. Dumbledore agreed to stop acting as if anyone involved were a chess piece and start acting as if they were people. This item was going to be the hardest, and Wade knew it. He added in his own hand at the bottom, I will remind you. Dumbledore read the paper. He read it a second time. He picked up a quill. Your list, he said, is agreeable to me. Good. Will you sign it? I already did. Look at the bottom. Dumbledore looked at the bottom. In Wade's handwriting in crayon, it said simply, Wade. Dumbledore signed it gravely under the crayon in ink. Harry, sir. Would you sign it as well? Harry signed it in small, even letters. He wrote H. Potter. There. Thank you, Harry. You're welcome, sir. I look forward to the summer. So do I, sir. The last week of term passed in a warm blur. Harry was briefly the famous boy from the troll story and the dungeon story and 2 or 3 stories that he had not participated in but that the school had written about him anyway. He bore it with Hermione noted admirable patience. He signed 2 autographs for second years on a dare. He also quietly walked Neville to herbology 3 mornings in a row because Neville had, for reasons neither of them discussed, stopped sleeping well the week Fluffy had died. Hagrid had cried over it for a full day quietly into Wade's shoulder, which Wade had offered without comment and which Hagrid had accepted, which Harry had watched from a distance, and which had become, in his private accounting, the single moment he understood that Wade had decided to stay in this world. And that this world had decided to let him. The end-of-year feast was in the Great Hall on the last night. The banners had been changed to Gryffindor scarlet and gold, a complicated mix of house points and, frankly, what the castle felt like, McGonagall said crisply, and the food was piled higher than the goblets, and the candles were even more absurd than usual. Halfway through the soup course, the great doors of the Great Hall swung open and a woman walked in. She was tall. She was wearing a blue dress the size and shape of a circus tent. She had blonde hair stacked up on her head like a complicated cake, and earrings the size of hubcaps, and a handbag so large it could have contained a small horse. Her lipstick was extremely red, her shoes were extremely high. She was waving at several professors. "Hello, darling," she boomed, in a voice that was not entirely successful in its attempt to sound like a voice that was not Wade Wilson's. "Hello, ALBUS, hello, Minerva. OH, Minerva, you look lovely. Have you done something with your something? OH, I'm Harry's aunt. I'm his weird aunt. I'm Aunt WNDA from the country." Professor McGonagall put her napkin over her face. Professor Sprout actually dropped her spoon. Professor Flitwick gave a small, polite shriek of delight. Dumbledore at the high table stood up. "Madam," Dumbledore said gravely, "we are honored." You are honored. Come here, let me kiss you on the cheek." Dumbledore, with a dignity Harry had not believed him capable of, walked the length of the head table and allowed Aunt Wanda to kiss him on the cheek, leaving a red lip mark the size of a small coin. He returned to his seat. The Gryffindor table, which had begun the evening in a respectable hush, was now openly weeping with laughter. Fred and George Weasley, 5 seats down from Harry, had fallen out of their chairs. "Harry," said Aunt Wanda, spotting him across the hall as if by accident. "Harry, my sweet boy, my nephew, the light of my declining years." "Hi, Aunt Wanda," Harry called. "You haven't written me since Tuesday." "I wrote you this morning." "Well, yes, that counts." Aunt Wanda made her way down the Gryffindor table, greeting every student on the way with specific and highly inaccurate personal details, hugged Harry so hard that his ribs protested, sat down backwards on the end of the bench, said, "Oh, I'm all right, I won't stay long, I just needed to see my nephew," in a voice that was already fading back into Wade's actual voice, and fed Harry a piece of bread from her own plate. She stayed for 40 minutes. Fred and George were by then sitting at her feet as disciples. "Those two," Wade murmured in Harry's ear as he made a show of restacking his hair, "those two I want to adopt. Also, can I adopt them? I would like a small fleet of red-haired chaos goblins. Ron's going to kill you. Ron's going to thank me. Ron's going to Ron, come here, Ron." Ron came wary. "Yes, Aunt Wanda, I'm going to be at your house this summer for 3 days of the week." "Mum, I have written to your mother. She has said yes. She has sent me a recipe for her treacle tart. She's expecting me, Ron, me. Aunt Wanda, I will be carrying a casserole. I will be wearing a cardigan." "Mum doesn't, Ron." "Mum does." Ron, for the first time in the school year, made a small, high-pitched sound of pure terror. Hermione, beside him, laughed so hard she slid halfway off the bench. Dumbledore from the high table watched them all, his eyes twinkling, his hand closed loosely around his goblet, a small pleased smile on his face, and under the smile Harry noticed a sadness that had not been there in September. A sadness that was not a regretful sadness. A sadness of a man who had seen his most careful plan replaced by a better plan and had been forced to admit, against his will, that his own plan had been worse. Harry met the old man's eyes. He raised his own goblet very slightly. Dumbledore slowly returned the gesture. Aunt Wanda Wade got up to go an hour later, kissed Harry on the top of the head, waved at the whole hall, announced that "SEVERUS, darling, I'll call you next week. We have things to discuss. I know your mother's maiden name," and swept out again through the great doors in a cloud of absurdly cheap perfume. The doors closed. The great hall, after a beat of stunned silence, erupted in applause. Snape, at the high table, put his face in his hands. The train ride home the next morning was, to Harry's surprise, the calmest part of the year. Hermione read. Ron played a chess game against himself and lost twice. Neville sat in the corner and watched the country stream past and was for once entirely content. Harry watched them all and noticed, with a small private astonishment, that he had a life now that had people in it. A castle, friends, a pattern of classes, a man in black who had, reluctantly, become one of his people, an old headmaster who was going to try, from this year on, to be honest with him, and who would fail sometimes and improve most of the time. A hidden enemy, of course, out there in the black, a slow shape of smoke somewhere in a Balkan forest, coiled under a rock, remembering. A long hunt coming, one stone at a time. Wade said 7 books, Harry murmured to Hermione as the train slid through the last stretch of countryside before London. "Books," he said. "This was book 1 of 7. I thought we were done. I think we're done with book 1. "Ah," he said, to buckle up. "That's a big buckle." "It is." On the platform at King's Cross, on the Muggle side of the magical wall, Wade was waiting. He was in his civilian coat again. The coat was ugly. The coat was his. He had not bothered to change out of the blue dress entirely, and there was, Harry noticed, a small smear of Aunt Wanda's red lipstick still on the corner of his mouth under the mask. He was holding in one gloved hand 2 katanas, unsheathed, gleaming, drawing looks from commuters who had not quite decided whether what they were seeing was real, and in the other a bouquet of flowers. The flowers were absurd. They were Gerbera daisies and stargazer lilies in a single yellow rose stuck in at an angle, and the bouquet had been assembled by a man who had not understood bouquets and had reacted by purchasing all of the bouquet. He stood on the platform and he waited for his kid. Harry stepped out of the train, Hermione waved, Ron waved, Neville of all people waved hardest. Then Harry was walking across the platform and Wade was walking to meet him, and the crowd, which had the good sense a London crowd has, was parting around the two of them in a soft, embarrassed way. Hey kiddo, hey Wade, good year, you okay? I'm okay, you ready for the next one? Harry thought about the thin dark shape of smoke in a forest somewhere. He thought about the 6 stones remaining after the one that was now, according to Dumbledore, safely returned. He thought about Hermione's notebook, Ron's sudden seriousness, Neville's quiet watching, the small ugly bouquet of his uncle's flowers. He thought about his mother's letter which Snape would, a small unfinished thing he suspected was going to happen one day eventually, give him. He thought about the cabin which he had not seen in 9 months, which smelled of cedar and old garlic and a fire that was probably still going because Wade, who had had a very bad year in many small ways about this, had almost certainly not let it out. Yeah, Harry said, I'm ready. Wade gave him the bouquet. These are for you, they are for you. Thank you, Wade. Welcome home, kiddo. Hi, welcome home. They turned together and walked up the long ramp into the station. The platform behind them emptied out under the slow clock. Fred and George Weasley at the far end, who had seen more than they let on, elbowed each other and filed something away for future use. A very tall, thin man in a long coat with a silver beard, who had been watching the exits in a very ordinary way, lowered his paper, smiled a small private smile, and disappeared as silver-bearded men in long coats will. Somewhere over Surrey, a cat with square whiskers was sitting on a wall, thinking about something, and not coming down. Somewhere in an old castle, a bird the color of sunset was singing a lullaby. Somewhere deep under the floor of a chamber nobody was going back into for a long time, the cold black shape of Lord Voldemort, stuffed into a stone as a temporary measure pending further deliberations, waited. He had time. He had always had time. He did not, however, have anything like the right family anymore to be coming for. And somewhere at the head of a station ramp in a very normal city, with a bouquet of the wrong flowers in his arms and the right man beside him and the long good noise of the world going on around him, an 11-year-old boy named Harry Potter, who was, if you asked, not a lamb, laughed out loud at a joke his uncle had made about a handbag and leaned his head against his uncle's shoulder and kept walking. So, said the narrator, somewhere near the ceiling, in a voice that sounded suspiciously familiar. Tune in next time when things get way worse. There's going to be a basilisk, there's going to be a diary, there's going to be some extremely ill-advised time travel because apparently that's a thing we can do now. Subscribe, ring the bell, smash that button, I love you, roll credits, Chapter 6 end.